up to $2.4 billion. S&P futures higher by almost 9 points now. Dow futures up 67 points. NASDAQ futures ahead by 40. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak. And it's coming up to 5:41 on Wall Street. Straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak, if you think the partisanship in the U.S. is
Had a special project recently, and we hired a temporary COO for just 1 day a week.
This will be perfect for us. How is Sirius spelled?
With a C, C-E-R-I-U-S.
C-E-R-I-U-S. Got it. Janice, you are a lifesaver.
Make the right hire the first time. Cover your company's leadership staffing gap on an interim, temporary, or part-time basis in less than a week. Learn more at SiriusExecutives.com. C-E-R-I-U-S. Executives.com.
Bloomberg Markets.
I'm Lisa Abramowitz.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. We'll speak to Porter Bidd of Media Tech Capital Partners on Disney and media earnings.
Plus, we'll discuss the future of central bank independence. Today at 10 on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Just gone 7:15 in New York. That means it's time now for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover above and beyond with your traffic update. Here's Peter Van.
All right, good morning, Jonathan. You want to avoid the inbound lower level of the George Washington Bridge. There's an accident right around
We saw an opportunity to transform medical imaging by turning 2D scans into 3D renderings. The computing power of Verizon 5G ultra-wideband will allow us to do this.
Road in Cliffside Park.
Dining al fresco at the Pico Tavern is like being at a summer resort. Enjoy exotic drinks on one of their 4 patios, $1 oysters on Wednesdays, and Thursday is lobster night. The best Sunday brunch is at Mike Monaco's Pico Tavern, old school Italian cuisine located in Hackensack.
When you think of the Meadowlands and great food, one name comes to mind: Segovia. Segovia Restaurant, Segovia Steakhouse, and now the new Segovia Maison. Segovia, one name, and now 3 great restaurants in the heart of the Meadowlands.
Imagine an Italian restaurant so good that New Yorkers travel to New Jersey for. That's Grissini in Englewood Cliffs. Grissini, where you can enjoy Chef Alberto's homemade pastas and amazing new creations. The Zagat-rated Grissini, high-end Italian dining in Englewood Cliffs.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
It is coming up to 7:30 in New York. That means it's time now for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover above and beyond. With your traffic update is Peter Van.
Jonathan, a crash in Harrison on the Hudge southbound over by exit 23. Problems continue in Greenwich. Trailer accident on the Connecticut Turnpike northbound by exit 2. This is causing residual delays on the New England Thruway northbound and 287 back into the New England Thruway. Also a collision, New Jersey Turnpike northbound truck lanes by interchange 14. George Washington Bridge, you need to be upstairs. There's an accident on the lower level. Minor delays upstairs, 20 minutes down, 15 to 20 at the Lincoln Tunnel. It's 10 minutes at the Holland. A little busy on the east side coming in with the RFK Triborough and 59th Street bridges. West Side Highway, just a little slow by the George Washington Bridge, but you're pretty busy with the Harlem River Drive FDR combo 130s into the 90s. 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130. 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine today. Just watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms. We'll have a high today, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny for tomorrow. Chance again of an afternoon shower and thunderstorm. Again, 85 to 90. Then partly sunny on Friday with a high near 85. With the best ride in and out of the city, this is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. We are live on Bloomberg Radio. We're 2 hours away from the opening bell. Here's the news you need to know this hour. U.S. futures inching higher, up by 2 0.2% after yesterday's 1.3% gain on the S&P 500. Meanwhile, in the foreign exchange market, the yuan is weaker after China's central bank set its daily reference rate just barely below a 7 handle. Over in Asia, 3 central banks across the Asia-Pacific delivering surprise interest rate decisions as policymakers take more aggressive action to counter the risks around the economic outlook. New Zealand, India led with bigger than expected interest rate cuts, while Thailand's 25 basis point reduction was a surprise to all but 2 in a Bloomberg survey of economists. That's the FX market. In the equity market, the headline from earnings, shares of Disney down almost 4% after earnings and revenue that missed analyst estimates. A little bit more on that a little bit later. Now time for some more headlines from around the world. Let's say good morning to Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Tom. The sites of the recent mass shootings in Ohio and Texas are preparing for a presidential visit. White House officials say President Donald Trump will bring a message of national unity and healing to Dayton and El Paso today. The communities are grieving for 31 killed and dozens wounded in weekend shootings. Some El Paso residents say they are not welcoming the president this afternoon, casting him as a flawed messenger. Democratic Representative Veronica Escobar of Texas said she declined an invitation to join the president.
His words have incredible power. You walk through all of these families, you walk through to this memorial, you'll see people in pain. I talked to a veteran earlier who said, I'm being made to seem as though I'm not American. The language that he uses to describe immigrants and Hispanics dehumanizes us.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Jonathan.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here is John Stashower.
John, many figured the Mets would trade Zach Wheeler a couple weeks ago. He can be a free agent. Why not get something in return? 2 weeks ago, the playoffs for the Mets seemed like a fantasy. No more. Mets keep winning, and it was Wheeler last night. 8 scoreless innings. He hurled 7 scoreless in his previous start. Mets over the Marlins 5-0 to make it 12 wins in the last 13 games. Wilson Ramos, 3-run homer. Pete Alonso, a solo shot. A matinee today at Citi Field with Steven Matz on the mound. He's the only starter to lose in the last 2 weeks. Yankees won again, 9-4 at Baltimore, 6 Yanks homered. Mike Tauchman and DJ LeMahieu back-to-back third inning. Brett Gardner and Cameron Maben went back-to-back in the ninth. Didi Gregorius and Austin Romine also went yard. The Yanks' 7th straight win, 14th in a row at Camden Yards. Second time in 3 nights, Gleyber Torres could not finish the game. He's gone back to New York for some tests. He won't play tonight as the Yanks go for the sweep. San Francisco Giants have released second baseman Joe Panik, Yonkers native, played at St. John's, helped the Giants win the World Series back in 2014. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. John?
John Stashower, thank you very much. John with the sports. You've had the news. Let's get you some price action, shall we? This Wednesday, futures are positive. We're up 5 points on the S&P, positive a little less than 0.2% on the S&P 500. In the bond market, yields just lower, curves flatter. That's the story that Tom and I will be talking about through the next couple of hours. 10-year yields coming in 5 basis points. Your yield right now, 166 on a 2-year note. Your yield around about 1.56%. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
From our world headquarters in New York, good morning, everyone. John Ferro and Tom Keene, thrilled you're with us. A Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by NJIT at Jersey City. Starting this fall, New Jersey Institute of Technology will offer graduate programs in data science at its Jersey City location. Learn more at njit.edu/Jersey City. Here's Bob Boone.
Tom, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's probably understandable if Elon Musk and other SpaceX executives had multiple fingers crossed last night.
2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
The latest Falcon 9 launch from Cape Canaveral was a do-over. Almost 3 years after one of its rockets exploded on the pad, destroying a satellite built by Israel-based Space Communications Limited, or Spacecom. SpaceX was flying this one for free, and this time the satellite was deployed successfully. According to a statement issued days after the September 2016 blast, SpaceX owed either $50 million in compensation or a future launch of another satellite for Spacecom. It took 15 months just for the pad to be restored. What did you say? I said tourists flooding into Japan are fueling booming sales in pocket translators, gadgets designed to communicate between multiple languages. While smartphone apps remain a popular and common translation tool, a device called Pocket Talk has carved out its own niche. Dedicated for just one purpose, the gadget has a sensitive microphone and accesses machine translation and voice recognition software from Google, Baidu, and others, improving accuracy. More than 500,000 Pocket Talk units have been sold since it debuted in 2017. And that's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan.
Bob Moon, thanks so much. Again, futures up 5, down futures up 41, yields lower. 5 things you need to know to start your day, brought to you by Portfolio Analyst, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analyst to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Download for free at ibkr.com/PA. Yields lower, but the total distinction today, John Farrow, is we've not really had curve flattening in the last 2 hours with a vengeance.
That's the key distinction, Tom, and something has changed in the bond market, and Steve Major of HSBC discussed it on this program yesterday. Typically, when central banks cut interest rates and start an easing cycle, the curve steepens, it bull steepens, the front end moves lower, and the long end rates start to think about inflation and growth expectations picking up. We don't see that. When these central banks start to act, what we see is the whole yield curve dragged down in the same way we see it in Japan, and we're seeing that on the screens today in the United States. A spread between 2s and 10s that is now in single digits, 8 basis points.
And aside, you got a commodity complex. Brent crude under 60 gets my attention as well. Central banks, I mean, it was a plethora, as they say in EM, a plethora of banks acting. Thailand, India.
And New Zealand. Yeah. And New Zealand acting aggressively.
You say Z. If you're in England, you say
RBNZ.
RBNZ.
And the Kiwis would say the same thing too.
The Kiwis.
The New Zealanders would say the same thing too.
What do you think of the central banks? Why get up loony Kiwi?
Well, I just think the 50 basis point move is aggressive relative to the realised data. Clearly, they're uncomfortable about the outlook, but just read the statement from the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Yeah. Employment is around its maximum sustainable level. Inflation within our target range. The recent data, improved employment, wage growth, that's welcome. They are uncomfortable, really uncomfortable with the outlook. And to see a central bank sitting on 1.5%, 150 basis points of ammunition, to spend 50 without really seeing the data weaken rapidly, that's a big move.
Yeah, on loony Kiwi, Farrell made a huge trade on this from a 108 level up to 117. They're stronger Canada, weaker New Zealand. OBE, overcome by events. What's your OBE right now? Who's going to get overcome by events?
I think the Federal Reserve is already overcome by events. Listening to Jim Bullard of the St. Louis Fed talk about how he didn't want to be dragged into the tit for tat with trade, I find that remarkable. It's not the Federal Reserve's job to make a political judgment. If the policy is bad and they decide it is going to infect the outlook, they need to respond to that, whether they like it or not.
To me, it's the president in equity market analysis. Christopher Verone publishing moments ago. It's Strategas. He calls it an unconvincing bounce so far. If the president loses his bounce, I would watch carefully.
Well, I would look at financial conditions and I'd keep an eye on credit and high yield. High yield spreads really blew out on Monday.
Christopher mentioned that.
They barely came in yesterday. Big contribution coming from the crude market with Brent in a bear market. So high yield credit is looking a little bit soft right now.
Now, Premier League is like one standings,
Is this the sports segment?
Yeah, but it's like one standings, right?
What do you mean?
There's like one rank.
Oh, yeah, there's one table.
There's one
league table.
Okay. Baseball's contrived. They do this because they're losing the fans, and they've got like 6 divisions. The Tampa Bay is, the New York Yankees are killing it. Tampa Bay's having a really good year. Like they'd be first place ahead of the Chicago Cubs. August 7, and I'm really thinking Red Sox season over. That's early, John.
You think it's over?
Well, I usually think it's over May
now.
1st. But I just think...
Can we get the John Tucker point of view on this? Because I don't know if you're just being pessimistic or getting real about it.
Well, that's what the Red Sox fans do.
Yes.
This way all the
just
time.
A pessimistic bunch.
Right through.
So you're playing up to that stereotype, or do you actually think that this is going to happen?
I am that stereotype. I got Narragansett lager beer in the refrigerator at home, and I am that stereotype.
That's pretty much it.
How many beers did you have last night?
We enjoyed what we call we had a Kurt Gowdy of Narragansett.
Do you want to explain in English what that is?
Kurt Gowdy was the giant of Red Sox baseball before.
What was the number on his back?
He's an announcer, John. Before Joe, the sainted Lord Castiglione. Kurt Gowdy was how many beers you drink with Kurt Gowdy watching the Red Sox lose to the Yankees.
I'm pleased we're making sense of this live on air.
Gowdy.
We should do this more often. Do you want to do this again tomorrow?
No, we can't, because the Red Sox will probably lose. This is Bloomberg. Futures up 5.
Coming up on the program, the obsession between the tit for tat between China and the United States. Weighing in, Fred Bergsten, Peterson Institute for International Economics founding director. Fred's coming up next on Bloomberg Radio.
Trade wars.
China responds to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs.
Volatile markets.
Yuan sinking to the weakest in a decade.
Today's the worst day of the year for the S&P 500.
To the latest headlines from around the globe. Stay with Bloomberg 1130. The following is a commercial message.
After several major corporations moved their tax professionals and their work to accounting firms, a wave of companies are exploring these lift-outs. KPMG's Brad Brown says,
in the last year, over 100 companies have come to us to rethink the future of their tax departments.
But getting rid of the whole department can be short-sighted.
We advise taking a more surgical approach. Look for pockets that are inefficient and leverage our significant investment in technology platforms.
Copyright 2019 KPMG.
CIOs, did you know digital transformation starts with 3 simple letters? It's not API or IoT. It's GEP, innovative cloud-based procurement and supply chain software. GEP has hundreds of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 customers and smart, intuitive software products that business users love. 3 letters, GEP, leaders in unified procurement and supply chain solutions. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
Listen to the Behind the Scenes podcast, an in-depth and personal conversation with the investors, economists, and CEOs coming through the Bloomberg Radio studios. On the latest episode, we sit down with former Massachusetts governor and presidential candidate Bill Weld.
I've had a fine career in international business, a lot of it in Asia and Africa. Very interesting stuff.
The Behind the Scenes podcast, brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Is your brand growing? Products and services selling? Is your advertising making an impression, sparking sales, educating customers? Many brands today are undermarketed, not because budgets are too small, but because advertising is poorly planned. Your agency must identify a clear objective, create a solid strategy, and target the right audience. It must research the competition, leverage your unique selling proposition, craft a comprehensive, measurable multi-platform media plan, and populate it with smart creative. Bluetooth Creative Group, a leading metro area advertising and marketing solutions provider, is an expert at producing strategic, effective advertising. From broadcast, print, and collateral, to digital, social, retail, and sales promotions, so your brand promise can generate sales. Bluetooth Creative Group. Learn more at bluetoothcreative.com.
Losing your hair? Thanks to the pioneering innovations at Bernstein Medical, robotic hair transplants now use your own hair to create natural, permanent results. The board-certified dermatologists at Bernstein Medical's Center for Hair Restoration will give you a careful and honest evaluation before recommending the best course of treatment. To schedule a consultation with us at our Midtown Manhattan facility, visit bernsteinmedical.com, a world leader in robotic hair transplants.
The 21st Annual Global Investment Conference, sponsored by H.C. Wainwright, is the premier event for professional investors. Over 250 companies present their investment stories in the biotech, healthcare, clean tech, metals and mining, and tech sectors, plus one-on-one meetings and networking events, September 8th through 10th at the Lotte New York Palace Hotel in Manhattan. Register at rodmanevents.com, rodmanevents.com. Rodman reserves the right and discretion to accept or reject registration or admission.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
I'm Doug Krisner. Is the yuan breaking 7 against the dollar a sign of more weakness to come? And how much has the U.S.-China trade war elevated the risk of a global recession? Tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
And at 7:45 on Wall Street, time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, a above and beyond. Here's Peter Van.
All right, John, the problems continue in Greenwich. Tractor-trailer accident on the Connecticut Turnpike northbound by exit 2. Why this is causing residual delays on the northbound New England Thruway and Route 287 getting to the New England Thruway. Also a crash on the Hutch southbound over by exit 23. You're busy on the Garden State Parkway northbound 135 up towards 140B, and the accident New Jersey Turnpike northbound truck lanes interchange 14. George Washington Bridge 5 to 10 up, 20 minutes down. That lower level accident cleared 10 to 15, both the Lincoln and Holland tunnels. And you're busy on the east side coming in, RFK Triborough, 59th and Williamsburg bridges. One train, West Side Highway, just slowing a bit off the ramp from the George Washington Bridge. You have delays, Harlem River Drive, FDR combo, 130s into the 70s, northbound towards the Williamsburg Bridge. Report is sponsored by LifeLock with Norton. LifeLock with Norton Security is the identity theft protection and device security that you need against cyber threats in today's connected world. Join at LifeLock.com. Use promo code RISK for 10% off your first year. 76 degrees, Central Park, clouds, some sunshine today, but boy, watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms. We'll have a high 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow, still a chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, 85 to 90 again, and partly sunny Friday, near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are higher, extending a rebound, and European shares are rallying as markets continue to recover from a brutal sell-off at the start of the week. Caution is on display, however, as bonds gain, while currencies were roiled by a series of dovish central bank moves in Asia. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. And S&P futures, they're now up only about 3 points now. Dow futures are up 16, NASDAQ futures up 19. The DAX in Germany's up 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 14 seconds, yield 1.65%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.56%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.8% or 43 cents at 53.21 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.4% or $20.19 at 15.0510 an ounce. The euro 1.1196 against the dollar, and the yen is at 106.01. The British pound is at 1.2147. CVS Health raised its 2019 earnings forecast for the second time this year after topping Wall Street estimates. And drug maker Teva Pharmaceuticals posted second quarter earnings that beat analyst estimates. Meanwhile, falling mortgage rates are spurring more U.S. homeowners to take advantage of the trend by refinancing to lock in more favorable payments. A gauge of mortgage refinancing volume rose 11.8% last week to the highest level since November 2016. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. Mohammed emails in from Florham Park, New Jersey, John Farrell, suggesting he's at the New York Jets training camp. He suggests that I should get over the Red Sox and watch the Mets. He has a tent, yeah.
He pitched a tent.
He's got a Bloomberg inside it, but he's got the whole terminal.
I would secure that tent, considering what's coming this way.
The weather's coming this way.
I love the idea that Mohammed is at training camp.
He goes to Jets training
with a Bloomberg terminal.
With a Bloomberg terminal
and
on it,
pops out to watch them train.
No, actually, we're kidding. He doesn't have a tent. He's got one of those Rockstar Airstreams, the whole Airstream trailer thing going.
I know what you're talking about. That like the A-list in Hollywood have.
Yeah, he's playing like, I don't know.
He just wrote in. He said that Tom should join the Mets wild card race bandwagon.
Got that.
What does that mean?
That means that 1986, Lenny Dykstra hit a ball off oil can Boyd. It never came down. It was hit so hard the World Series was over then. So you do nothing with the Mets.
Should I YouTube that?
You should YouTube that. Yeah, oil can.
I'll YouTube that. You bring in the next guest.
I'll bring in the next guest. We are steamed to give you, without question, the historical perspective of China and the United States. You can only do that with Fred Bergston, the founder of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, and he is definitive on diplomacy and expecting the unexpected as we speak to China. Fred, we are thrilled to have you on today. What does President Trump not know, with all your decades of experience of international economics in China? What's the unexpected for President Trump?
He overestimates his own ability to get the Chinese to capitulate to his demands. he fails to recognize the need to mobilize America's allies to work with him in the confrontation with China, and therefore he risks triggering a really major and continuing trade and now currency war that could really tank both our own economy and the world economy.
We see, Fred Bergston, this morning, yields ever lower. We see central banks on an ad hoc basis slashing interest rates as well. Citigroup Asia published a short note on United States intervention in the currency markets. Are we at the point where we get less coordinated intervention by the Bank of Japan to weaken the yen, or by U.S. Treasury to adjust the dialogue?
There's a risk of that when the United States designates China as a currency manipulator, as it did 2 days ago. When there is no evidence that China is manipulating, it risks the whole fabric of monetary cooperation that has been so important for the last 30 or 40 years. There are agreements in the G20 and the G7 and bilaterally between the United States and other key allies, the Japanese, the Europeans, and others, to coordinate and consult closely before operating in the currency markets. When the U.S. designates China a manipulator with no evidence, and in fact, when China has been operating on the other side of the market, it just causes our allies in treasuries and central banks around the world to shake their heads, ask what the Americans are doing, obviously know that it's President Trump forcing his Secretary of the Treasury to make a designation that has no basis in fact, and therefore undermines any prospect for really cooperative and effective behavior in the currency markets or more broadly.
So, Fred, the big worry, of course, and the ultimate irony of all of this is that actually what the administration would quite like is for the Chinese to manipulate the currency, just to continue manipulating the currency stronger, which is what they've been doing for the last year or so, Fred. I think a question for a lot of our listeners is whether the Chinese, by allowing it to weaken on Monday, sent a signal to the administration that they may well be prepared to use the currency, to weaponize the currency. Fred, what are your thoughts on that?
I think one has to really nuance that carefully.
Well, please do.
Yeah, I think the Chinese have been quite careful not to manipulate in the sense of driving their currency down. They know that would be objectionable and would justifiably trigger a counter response. However, they have undone their manipulation, which you point out has been in our favor. They have been intervening to keep their currency from weakening. That's been very much to our advantage. They have now undone that, at least to some extent, let the market forces that are driving their currency down prevail, at least to some extent, and yes, we use that to respond to Trump's trade threats and trade actions. But one has to distinguish between that permitting market forces to drive their currency down a bit. That's very different from their taking overt action, intervening to drive it down. As you say, they've been manipulating, to use the term in a colloquial sense, in our direction. And Trump is actually asking them to manipulate more to keep their currency from weakening. Rather ironic, you might say. But they can counter and do so in a justifiable way by simply letting the market forces, which are certainly pushing the renminbi in a weakening direction, to prevail, at least to some extent.
So, Fred, we have to understand, though, whether the end result is the same. So they move away from constraining the currency. They don't move towards actively weakening the currency. By moving from constraining to tolerating a weaker currency, that still sends a signal. And I'm just wondering whether they continue to send that signal in the coming weeks, or whether that strategy is too big a double-edged sword for the Chinese to really lean on.
Well, I think they may continue that, but only to a limited extent for the reason you imply. The Chinese are horrified by the thought of a free fall or a sharp plunge in the exchange rate of their currency. They experienced that in 2015. It had very negative and worrisome effects on their own economy. It triggered some capital flight out of China. They want to avoid that at all costs. So to whatever extent they may weaponize, as you say, the exchange rate by letting it weaken to offset Trump's tariffs, I think they would do so only to a very limited extent. And though it would compensate to some extent for Trump's tariffs, I don't think we should fear that it will have a massive effect in improving their competitive position.
Fred Burston, one final question. Madame Lagarde has had a tenure on the watch at the IMF. She wanders off to Frankfurt for, a crisis-free era at the ECB. Who's the right person to take over the IMF? Is it time to look someplace other than Europe?
I think it is time to look around the world to get the best person to run the IMF. Could be an American. It could be an Asian. There are several very plausible Asian candidates. I think the time has come to end this monopoly through which the U.S. runs the World Bank and the Europeans run the IMF. That is an anachronism, and it should be discarded.
Is Adam Posen on your short list to run the IMF?
I think he'd be great.
Very good, Fred Burston. We'll leave it there.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you so much, Fred Burston. He is a founder of the Institute for International Economics, the Peterson Institute for International Economics, and his value to the nascent study of the Washington Consensus in international relations in America can't be calculated.
Just on the IMF, of course, we had the EU nominee last week for the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, the Bulgarian economist, currently number 2 at the World Bank. So whether they follow through with that EU nomination, I don't know, Tom, but I imagine she's the front runner right now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm hearing just a jumble. The whole thing is just a mess, and a lot of different constituencies have to find it. Very quickly here, let's go through the data. I want to talk about Disney briefly, but the 30-year bond, 2.17% in 6 beeps is stunning. I mean, the long papers. What do you see, John?
Curve flattening in the United States, 2s, 10s, that spread now around about 8 basis points. Quite remarkable. Curve flattening, even though we've had the rate cut from the Fed, that curve is flatter. You need to pay attention to that.
See Disney today? Michael Nathanson out with research on Disney.
You weren't going to the parks. You've got to visit the parks, Tom.
We got to go to the parks.
Just watch the movie.
He said it was way too complicated. Michael Nathanson and his team, Moffett Nathanson, citing Ms. Levine. Ms. Levine.
Oh, smart. Nice.
Michael Nathanson all over Avril.
It is coming up to 8 a.m. in New York City. That means it's time now for Land Rover drive time traffic. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover above and beyond with your traffic update. Here's Peter Van.
Jonathan, tough morning in Greenwich. It continues Connecticut Turnpike with this accident northbound. Exit 2, tractor trailer involved, causing residual delays on the northbound side of the New England Thruway, and also 287 across Westchester County as you come back towards the New England Thruway. George Washington Bridge, 20 up, 5 to 10 down, 10 to 15 with the Lincoln Tunnel. Holland Tunnel is 15 minutes off of 1 and 9. You're looking pretty good with the Turnpike approach. On the east side coming in, busy 59th and Williamsburg bridges, also the Queens Midtown Tunnel. One Trenton, you slow, Harlem River Drive, FDR combo 130s into the 70s. We're at 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130, 3-day forecast. Clouds, a few peaks of sunshine today. Watch out for these showers and thunderstorms later, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow. Once again, chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, high 85 to 90. Partly sunny on Friday, temperatures near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is WBDR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Business is like a puzzle.
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg surveillance, economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone, from our world headquarters in New York, the acclaimed Farrow Studios here at 59th and Lexington Avenue. Jonathan Farrow and Tom Keene, the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We thank Interactive Brokers for their support. We got a frame of who we're talking to. Sirius XM, channel 119. Up in Boston, as I said, I think season over. New York with two on fire baseball teams. Washington, good morning, 99.1 F. Don't forget, Kevin Cirilli, lighting it up in Washington, 5 p.m., Bloomberg Sound On, and he has been on fire with all that's going on.
Very cool. He's the most energetic colleague I know.
Yeah,
that
he's
guy
been on fire.
is just on fire.
And I don't know why we're not running it like worldwide or whatever, because, Washington is really front and center, and it's great. I mean, I'm going to the Bloomberg terminal. Tom Secunda says, do more quotes with the Bloomberg terminal. And, John, it's a bond market this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not Monday, OMG, the stock market's down 700 points, but it's the same equivalent in price up, yield down.
30-year yields coming in 7 basis points. Your yield right now on a 30-year Treasury, 2.166%.
Yeah.
That's the 30-year.
And I mean, the Germany paper, and this comes off, both you and I, we don't want to editorialize, but I would suggest it is a fact that the CFO of Commerzbank, partly government-owned, was like, there's really no problem.
Oh, the complacency coming out of Germany is absolutely unreal.
We're in control.
Tom, here's an economy with a manufacturing PMI with a 43 handle. 43.
Yeah.
We interviewed the German finance minister here at Bloomberg just a couple of weeks ago, and we talked to him about the prospect of fiscal stimulus. He batted it away. The only actor in Europe right now is the ECB. And when you speak to the C-suite in Germany, I don't know what they're saying behind closed doors, but publicly, the complacency is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, Karsten Bresky giving us some good ING perspective this morning, and he really pushed against what you're talking about. He said it is a domestic economy that is crumbling. That's his words.
And let's think about what the banks have been doing. The banks have been focusing on the domestic economy, and the domestic economy in Germany right now does not look great.
I mean, to keep this going, UniCredit, which folks, if you don't know, is a big, perceived as well-run Italian bank. Is it Banco Intesa? Do you like how I said that?
That was beautiful. Well done.
It's my French Rosetta Stone with Francine.
Nice, you've been practicing.
Banco Intesa. But Intesa's actually like a real bank, but UniCredit with a gap lower this morning.
UniCredit slashed its full-year revenue target by $1 billion. Commerzbank basically said the goal of lifting its profit became increasingly ambitious. ABN AMRO have come out and said it's adding to all of this fear in the market at the moment. They didn't say that, I am. They're saying their margins have been hit.
We had green on the screen, futures reversed, now -6. John, figure out why that is. We were up 8, up 10. Right now we're -7 on futures. Maybe the president tweeted and I don't know it. Bloomberg surveillance this morning brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Check out Business of Baseball, an original MLB video series exploring the business side of America's pastime. Visit CohnResnick.com/MLB Cohn-Resnick. Advisory Assurance Tax. Let me spell that. CohnResnick. Cohn-Resnick. Advisory Assurance Tax. Boy, futures flipped, huh?
Futures flipping just a little bit, and in the bond market, the theme continues. Yields lower. High yield, a space to watch today. We talked about it through the morning. Credit on Monday. High yield spreads in the United States blowing out the most since 2011, wider by 40 basis points. Yesterday, they came in just 6 basis points. You will all remember at the back end of 2018, the high yield market completely seized up. It shut down. We had no primary issuance whatsoever through the month. Many people felt that was the trigger point, the pain, the epicenter of the pain for the Fed's turn at the turn of the year.
Yeah.
So look out for that in the credit market through the week. Do things pick up? I will say one bright spot, and actually it depends on what your argument is here. Oxy came out in the credit market yesterday.
Yeah,
Occidental.
how'd that go?
Unbelievable. They sold $13 billion worth of debt to fund this Anadarko deal.
What did it come in at?
Order book was $75 billion. Initial price talk on the 30-year tranche, the 30-year maturity, initial price talk was 270 basis points over Treasuries. That came all the way in to 225. So you had an investment-grade issuer come in, massive demand for this debt, and a yield. And why do you think there's demand? There's a yield here of 225 over 30 years.
I'm going to go back to Sir John Templeton a million years ago in his Tennessee accent. He said to me, I was honored that he said this to me. I didn't even shave 4 days a week back then. He said, Tom, there'll be a shortage of bonds. And that's where we are.
And even, Tom, even with that credit risk on the table at the moment, even with crude in a bear market, even with people questioning the deal, that debt got away really well.
I want to do a promotion here, which is really a good friend of surveillance over the years. But look at yen blowing from a 106 to a 105.83. I mean, I want to make clear, folks, this is important. The markets today are as angst-driven as Monday, but just not in a, OMG, my 401k is going down hysteria.
The Japanese yen is doing its job, and I think that's a really important
well said,
part.
well said.
It has retained the risk-mitigating characteristics that maybe it lost over the last couple of years. I don't know. You can make that judgment call, but it has performed that job in the last couple of weeks. It has been the shock absorber in G10.
And one that has not moved is Euro Swissy. It would be a 108 handle equivalent to yen, and it really hasn't moved strong Swiss.
So today, the guidebook for today, here's something I'll look out for.
Okay.
Charles Evans speaks a little bit later today of the Chicago Fed. He's holding a media breakfast in Chicago.
I did not know this.
And he does that at 9:30 Eastern Time. And I think this is really important because there's some real tension between the Federal Reserve and the trade war story. There was a belief last week after that Fed meeting that the Fed would have no choice but to get pulled into underwriting the trade dispute. We had a little bit of subtle pushback from the St. Louis Fed President Jim Bullard yesterday, and I wonder if that's something that continues as we hear from more and more policymakers ahead of Jackson Hole.
Yeah. Is he doing that breakfast in Chicago at Wildberry Pancakes and Cafe?
I hope so.
Or at the Stan McKee?
I would have thought Michael McKee would be there.
I would think, you'd think Charles Evans would do it at in Wayne's World.
Michael McKee, wouldn't Charles Evans have pancakes and have a really good time over in Chicago today? Wouldn't you want to be at that media breakfast?
Well, and bacon, of course. Maybe made from feral hogs.
Is this a Fed? Michael McKee joining us now for some quick perspective here with futures deteriorating -9. Michael, is this a Fed that's going to be OBE, overcome by events? I mean, I'm seeing actions out there. And it's, as I said earlier, it's not Monday, it's not gloom and doom, but I'm looking at a screen that is unique.
Well, everybody is looking out for themselves at this point, and you can't blame them, but when you look at what happened overnight in the central banks of Asia, all cutting by more than anticipated, and the currency effect that's having, it's going to totally weigh on the dollar. I mean, the Japanese are going to have to do something at this point, the way they are pushing up the yen as the only safe haven in Asia. The big banks are going to be stuck. They're going to, and especially with Donald Trump worried about the strength of the dollar, it's only going to go up.
I'm looking at Citigroup Asia putting out a research note on U.S. currency intervention, not going against China, but going against the more liquid currencies, Singapore dollar, Korean won maybe, Japanese yen, etc. But this harkens back to years of my youth. We haven't seen Treasury intervention since time began, right?
Well, it was the early to mid '90s was when that all sort of came to an end when Bob Rupert.
I know you're too old to remember that.
That was the days of classical music, right? It fell out of favor because it doesn't work. Because when one country does it, it works. Let me step back. It works if everybody's agreed. The Plaza Accord worked. The Louvre worked too well. They had to have the Louvre Accord. But because all of the major central banks were agreed on the move to be made, it worked. It worked in 2000 with the euro because the Europeans asked the world's central banks to do that.
With Japan after that, Mike, as well.
But if Japan after the earthquake. If everybody is looking out for themselves, we can go into the currency markets, but everybody else has to go into the currency markets.
And Mike, this is the big change. When a central bank typically moves, we expect financial conditions to ease. But if they all start directly going through the FX channel, if that's what we start to see from Europe, from the United States, from others as well, you can have a situation where financial conditions actually go the other way. They tighten. Is that a big risk here, Mike?
It would be a risk. And I think that is one reason that you're going to see pushback from the central banks, from the Fed, from the ECB. Bank of Japan certainly doesn't want to have to do any more because it doesn't have a whole lot of policy options. So they're going to tell their fiscal agents that this is not going to work. we don't think this can happen. Now, Treasury in the U.S. can sell whatever it can get its hands on, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, or they can go to Congress for more authorization.
If they did that, are we manipulators?
Yes. Anybody who would be selling their currencies to affect the currency rate for trade or GDP reasons would be a manipulator, and maybe we would sanction ourselves, send ourselves to the corner. But the Fed normally joins with Treasury in interventions, but in this case, I suspect they would push back.
But it would be uncoordinated, which you and
definitely would be
smart people have said that doesn't work.
Yes, and it would upset a lot of people. I mean, we start selling the Canadian dollar or the Mexican peso, or buying them rather. They're not going to like us.
Michael McKee, thank you so much for
Good to see you, Mike.
update. And this was the markets on the move. John, I just sent Luke Cow a note. Would you explain why equities have rolled over? I don't have a real strong reason. It must be out there somewhere. Negative 13 S&P futures, Dow futures at negative 141. I got to get the charts out and look at where important levels are there. The VIX 21.37.
And now for the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Jonathan, Tom, thank you very much. After meeting with the victims of the Dayton mass shooting today in Ohio, President Trump will visit El Paso to meet with victims and first responders of the Walmart massacre that left 22 people dead. There's a call from some El Paso residents for the president not to come because he's a flawed messenger. The rest of the nation is on edge in the wake of last weekend's mass shootings. Last night brought a scare in Times Square when a backfiring motorcycle was mistaken for gunfire, and it sparked panic among a large cluster of tourists who began running through the plaza. The same day in Utah's Valley Fair Mall, a large sign fell over, making a loud bang, and it caused a number of people to scream and run. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Jonathan, Tom?
Michael Barr, thanks so much. SPX futures in negative 15. I'm looking at critical levels. I don't know, down a few more points as well. We're really deteriorating rather quickly. This is Bloomberg. Stay with us.
Bloomberg Surveillance is brought to you by Witham, a forward-thinking technology-driven advisory and accounting firm helping clients be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. Visit witham.com to learn more.
The David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations. David sits down with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Every morning, the first thing I do is read about China.
Tomorrow afternoon at 5 on Bloomberg 1130. Brought to you by Wells Fargo Healthcare Banking.
In today's volatile markets, investors need resilient portfolios to help handle the pressure. Through decades of expansions and recessions and changing interest rates, clients have turned to PIMCO to help them stay on course, no matter what course markets take. PIMCO, active fixed income solutions that aim to give investors an edge. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Investing in the bond market is subject to risks. Consult your investment professional prior to making an investment decision.
No company wants to be involved in an international dispute. But when disagreements arise, you need expertise at your side. Take a closer look at ICDR, the International Center for Dispute Resolution. Backed by the longevity and strength of the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of cross-border dispute resolution services, handling more cases than any other institution. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Your city is full of adventure just waiting to be uncovered. And to help you navigate it all, look no further than the uncompromising new Range Rover Evoque. Designed to bring you the best driving experience yet, the Evoque lets you live for the city in a vehicle as vibrant as its streets. Purchase the 2020 Range Rover Evoque S starting at MSRP $42,650. Price excludes administration fees, taxes, license, and other fees. Retailer price, terms, and vehicle availability may vary. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer or call 1-800-FIND-4WD for details. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Attention investors. Stocks got you sideways. Worried about volatility? Then diversify into Class A income-producing property units for up to 21% cash flow. National Realty's Class A property fund includes only prime income-producing new construction properties. These are built far below market value in Brooklyn, Hoboken, West New York, and Delray Beach, Florida. You're secured on high-demand mid-rises. You're diversified with income from multiple properties. You're prioritized in cash flow with substantial bank-appraised equity and and solid real estate backing you. National has a 12-year track record of success with over $800 million of property managed. Now's the time to diversify with up to 21% apartment-backed financial units for your IRA or monthly cash flow. Once you see these Class A locations, you'll wonder what took you so long to call 201-210-2727. Call 201-210-2727. An offer to buy or sell any security is only made by our private placement memorandum. Read it first and invest wisely. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. National is a real estate development firm. See us at nria.net.
In my career, I was great at making money, but giving it away wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I wanted to be tax smart and support charities in the neighborhood where I grew up, but I had no idea where to start. Then I discovered the New York Community Trust. They really have their finger on the pulse of the city, and they help me make an impact through thoughtful giving strategies. To set up your charitable fund through the New York Community Trust, visit nycommunitytrust.org.
Bloomberg Business Week.
I'm Carol Master. Join Paul Sweeney and me as John Reese, head of Global M&A at White & Case, gives us an outlook for deals and earnings from Fox, Lyft, and CVS. Today at 2 on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Just gone 8:15 in New York City. That means it's time now for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover above and beyond. With your traffic update, here's Peter Van.
Jonathan, problems in Newark, eastbound 78. Everything is closed by the Bay Bridge because of a collision. And you're busy on the Garden State Parkway northbound exit 135 up towards 140B. Those problems continue in Greenwich. Connecticut Turnpike northbound crash by exit 2. Residual delays on the northbound New England Thruway and Route 287 getting to the New England Thruway. George Washington Bridge, 20 minutes upstairs, 5 to 10 down, 10 to 15 minutes at the Lincoln Tunnel. Holland is just busy off of 1 to 9, 15 minutes. You look great with the Turnpike approach. And watch for delays into town on the east side with the 59th and Williamsburg bridges, also the Queensman Town Tunnel. West Side Highway, some brake lights, George Washington Bridge into the 150s. Very heavy with the Harlem River Drive, FDR combo 130s into the 70s. Report is sponsored by LifeLock with Norton. LifeLock with Norton Security is the identity theft protection and device security that you need against cyber threats in today's connected world. You can join at LifeLock.com. Use promo code RISK for 10% off your first year. 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130, 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine for today. Watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms. We'll have a high 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow. Again, afternoon shower or thunderstorm, 85 to 90. And partly sunny Friday, near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures have turned lower this morning. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. That's right. A big reversal in the futures since the last time we spoke, with Dow futures now down 130 points. S&P's dropped 12, and NASDAQ futures declined by 23. The U.S. 10-year yield falls to 1.62% amid global easing. Gold is trading higher by 23, and European markets are still trading higher, led by gains in France. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 3 o'clock, consumer credit. And after the bell last night, Disney EPS missed the lowest estimates, and Match is up 17% in the pre-market after revenue beat estimates. Regarding some of the earnings this morning, Capri Holdings was mixed, and CVS is up 5% pre-market after raising its forecast. In other news, Reuters reported that Tesla may raise prices in China next month. And in deal news, Cambrex to be acquired by Permira Funds for $60 a share in cash. Wrapping things up, International Flavors was raised to overweight at J.P. Morgan after yesterday's 16% drop. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
Bill, thanks. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. Now it's time for Focused on Fixed Income, brought to you by PIMCO, for investors who demand more than the markets deliver. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Consult your investment professional before investing. 10-year Treasury up 22 seconds. The yield 1.62%. The yield on the 2-year 1.54%, and the 30-year yield at 2.15%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. I can't convey the importance of where the markets are now. It's different than Monday. Monday was an equity carnage, but today we see price up, yield down, and curve flattening. For those that don't keep score of that, that is a recession signal to many traditionalists. And I know John Farrell, our next guest, pushes against the certitude of what the curve signals.
Yeah, let's bring our next guest in as we look at these bond markets and a spread between 2s and 10s that remains around 8 basis points. But the 30-year yield, just want to help you all with where we are relative to where the record low is. The record low 30-year yield that we hit back in the summer of 2016 was 2.0882% on an intraday basis. Right now, we're at 2.15. We are a handful of basis points away from a record low.
We've been in 5 basis points in the last
maturity.
hour and a half.
A big move. We're down 8 basis points on the session at the long end. John Norman joining us now, JP Morgan Head of Cross Asset Fundamental Strategy. John, just walk us through what you're seeing on the screens. A breakdown on equity at the top of the hour, but elsewhere all morning we've seen strong yen and a really strong bid through the Treasury market. Just how are you framing this for clients?
To me, it's just sort of a continuation of the wake-up call that started a week ago when Trump announced that he would potentially lift tariffs on September 1st. The setting of the market going into that announcement was a market that was rich, a market that was basically pricing in a return to trend growth on both the economy and earnings. And we're not going to get that return to trend if these tariffs go up on September 1st. So you're seeing a gradual sort of deflation of an overvaluation problem in markets. You're not cheap yet. There's no risk premium that I see developing in stocks and in credit just because spreads are up 15 basis points from their lows on high grade and stocks are down 5% from their high. That's just kind of deflating the richness, not pricing in a risk premium.
If we bring in their disinflation, their deflation, is it an aggregate Fed tightening, I should say, where the 25 beep cut of it seems like ages ago is just evaporated?
No, I think financial conditions are still loosening through the interest rate market, even though inflation may be going down. You're getting a bigger decline in real interest rates because nominal rates are declining even more quickly than inflation expectations. So I wouldn't look at it that way. The way I would think of it is you've got this kind of unquantifiable force of a trade war, and the Fed doesn't look like it's willing to offset these risks preemptively. That was kind of the takeaway message from Bullard last night, and I think that's what's driving not only the rally in bonds, but the flattening of the U.S. curve. The sense that the Fed may be there eventually, but it's definitely not looking to get ahead of Trump, and it may not even move in lockstep with Trump.
That may be true, but the Fed can't solve our trade war. That has to be solved at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Do you observe advisors that can nudge this president towards a successful outcome?
I don't know, which whisper from which advisor in which ear has the most impact on him. I think it's going to be more some combination of his approval rating dropping more significantly and the stock market declining more than it already has. And the approval rating is slipping, but it's a couple of points. It's not even at kind of the lows that we've seen during the whole government shutdown debacle and some of the impeachment-related issues last summer. So, I guess the feedback mechanism will eventually convince him to stop what he's doing. But I think that feedback mechanism means an approval rating kind of in the high 30s. Right now, it's sort of in the low 40s. And I think it means the stock market at least 5% lower than where we are now.
John, if you're looking for 5% lower, I just wonder what central banks can do to turn things around, just in terms of the enthusiasm and sentiment right now. There was a belief that they could offset bad policy with good policy, so to speak. If that's the way you frame this, if that's your bias, if that's your judgment call. John, at the moment we're seeing rate cuts. We had it from Thailand, India, New Zealand. The rate cuts aren't working. Will the monetary policy easing offset some of the trade disruption and the risks around the outlook?
I don't think they will over the short term because, as I mentioned, the Fed is not looking to move ahead of Trump. It's not looking to provide a lot of insurance against this threat. So if it's only sort of responding reactively, I think the best you can hope for is that in 6 months' time, growth is going to be kind of where we are now after dipping first. and that's why to me it's kind of hard for markets to break out of a range from here. Essentially, you're getting the upside capped by tariffs, and you're not getting a quick lift out of central banks.
John Norman, J.P. Morgan, thank you so much. John, you're screaming over there. What do you got?
I'm just going to say thanks to John and then get to some of the price action.
Yeah, and the price action is extraordinary. To be review here, we had a solid green on the screen, and then John Farrow, it flipped. There's no other way to put it.
Futures rolling over. Futures bouncing back a little bit. We're down 7 points. We're off by 0.25%. But it's the action elsewhere. It's the moves in the bond market that I think warrant the most attention this morning. The distance between 2s and 10s, your spread, your yield curve, is now 8 basis points. That's your distance between the 2-year yield and the 10-year maturity. The moves right now on nominal yields are pretty big. We're down 7 basis points on a 30-year yield to 2.16. On a 2-year note, your yield right now coming in 2 basis points to 1.56%. And we're getting really close to some big levels. On the 30-year yield, your record low back in the summer of 2016 was 2.088%. Right now, the yield is 2.16. The bond market, the epicenter of some of the price action. The coverage continues right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we continue with John Norman of J.P. Morgan, the correlations in the market. If you're with Global Wall Street, stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
For 17 consecutive years, MBAF has been recognized by Inside Public Accounting as a best of the best firm. MBAF serves domestic and international clients across a broad range of industries and practice areas in more than 55 countries and all 50 states. MBAF, CPAs and Advisors, celebrating 50 years of sophistication and excellence. Learn more at mbafcpa.com.
At Indeed, we understand that when it comes to hiring, it's important to have a large talent pool to choose from. But sometimes too many good options can be overwhelming. That's why Indeed doesn't just give you access to a large pool of job seekers. We also offer screener tools that let you instantly narrow down your search. Hone in on hiring with Indeed. Experience Indeed for yourself today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting at Indeed.com/promo. Terms and conditions apply.
Garden State Dining presents New Jersey's finer restaurants.
Enjoy casual fine dining at Rustica Restaurant in Cliffside Park. There's a new chef, a new Italian-American menu, and classic service in the most elegant, art-filled dining room. Rustica Restaurant and Lounge, a Gold Coast favorite on Gorge Road in Cliffside Park.
Dining al fresco at the Pico Tavern is like being at a summer resort. Enjoy exotic drinks on one of their 4 patios, $1 oysters on Wednesdays, and Thursday is lobster night. The best Sunday brunch is at Mike Monaco's Pico Tavern, old-school Italian cuisine located in Hackensack.
When you think of the Meadowlands and great food, one name comes to mind: Segovia. Segovia Restaurant, Segovia Steakhouse, and now the new Segovia Maison. Segovia, one name and now 3 great restaurants in the heart of the Meadowlands.
Imagine an Italian restaurant so good that New Yorkers travel to New Jersey for. That's Grissini in Englewood Cliffs. Grissini, where you can enjoy Chef Alberto's homemade pastas and amazing new creations. The Zagat-rated Grissini, high-end Italian dining in Englewood Cliffs.
Dear Calvary Hospital, when my mom was suffering at the end of her life, we knew that Calvary's expert at-home care was the solution. After all, it was only 10 years earlier that your expert Calvary at-home staff relieved my dad's pain and anguish during his final days at home. What was most remarkable, that both times, you not only provided pain-free comfort and care for our parents, but you also turned a stressful situation filled with anxiety and uncertainty into a peaceful one for all of us. Twice, you created a quality of life that we never knew was possible during these times. We will never forget what you did for our dad, our mom, and us. Julianne Federuso.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. With Calvary at Home, experience our unique Calvary care right in your own home. Call us today at 718-518-2465.
It is coming up to 8:30 in New York. That means it's time now for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover above and beyond with your traffic update. Here is Peter Van.
All right, Jonathan, a couple problems in Newark. The big one, eastbound 78. Everything is shut down by the Bay Bridge. A little busy on the east side coming in, 59th, Williamsburg, and RFK Tri-Road bridges along with the Queens Midtown Tunnel. West Side Highway just slowing a bit off the ramp from the George Washington Bridge, but you're pretty busy with the Harlem River Drive FDR combo 130s into the 70s. We're at 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130. 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine for today. Do watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms we're going to have. We'll have a high today, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow, an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, 85 to 90 again. And partly sunny on Friday and a high near 85. Best ride in and out of the city, Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Your economic indicators are brought to you, as always, by Commonwealth Financial Network, putting independent advisors and their clients first for 40 years. Learn more about the firm whose only business interest is yours. Commonwealth, doing the right thing since 1979. Visit commonwealth.com. We are light on the economic data front. MBA mortgage applications are coming out. They are out and coming out at positive 5.3% tomorrow. Initial jobless claims Friday, PPI. And Tom, you're right. Right now, the economic data, nobody does care about the realized economic
as
data.
we heard from Conrad DeQuadros, up 2% GDP.
It is
and the
about
markets
the
don't
outlook
feel that.
and the risks around the outlook and a central bank response to it so far.
It's Math Wednesday. We can do that with John Norman of J.P. Morgan, who's been very kind to stay around with us given the market sell-off. We see price up, yield down in bonds. I don't want to get into the Greek letters, John Norman, because it's summer, but I would suggest the systemic risk, the epsilon that is out there is substantial. What do you see at the end of all these equations? What do you see in terms of the built-in risks of the system?
I think the risks are pretty substantial because you have what is transpiring in the manufacturing sector, which is kind of a near recession. And if there's a near recession in one sector, you really have to worry about contamination to other sectors that are more resilient, like services and labor. So this is basically the thin end of the wedge. I guess the risk is it just kind of widens out as tariffs go up and the months pass. And if that's the scenario, you have to think markets need a bit more cheapness to accommodate that. And that to me is kind of the big disconnect is markets just don't acknowledge that in manufacturing, which is pretty worrisome, spreads out.
Are we correlated, or is the idiosyncratic tone of a year still in place?
I'd say the correlations are about as you would expect when recession risks are rising, meaning anything that's considered cyclical, whether it's credit, equities, the emerging market complex is going down, and bond markets are rallying, and defensive currencies like yen and Swiss and defensive commodities like gold are rallying. I think the only correlation that's kind of broken down is what's going on in EM local rates. EM local rates are behaving like developed market rates. They're rallying as stress increases, and that's something that's kind of unusual to see that part of the EM complex pretty firm, even as global growth is moving down.
So, John, let's talk about that. When it's happening, I understood the argument as people were anticipating a weaker dollar. They're not getting one. So what are they looking for in local rates over in EM?
Well, what they're assuming is that because rates are going down in the DMs, that all the EMs can ease as well. And that's typically not how it plays out. There's some EMs that can ease because they have current account surpluses, and therefore they're not subject to sudden shocks from big capital outflows when stress is rising. But I would say that doesn't characterize all of EM right now. That's a way to talk about Asia. That's why Asia can cut rates. That's the way you can talk about maybe some EMs like Russia that have current account surpluses, but it's just not the case that countries like Turkey and South Africa can be cutting substantially when they're running deficits, and there are a lot of concerns around global growth. So I think that's probably a place where you can see a bit more
Local rates need to back up, and we need to see some differentiation again between EM and developed markets. Where does Italy fit into all of that?
I think you can look at it as a quasi-EM type product in the sense that what it embeds is duration risk and credit risk, and there is more credit risk in Italian bonds relative to other DM bonds simply because of the fiscal position and the recession that the country is in. So I agree with you. I think it is. We are maybe setting up for a bit of a turning point where Italian bonds just don't keep pace with bonds, and maybe there's even directional decorrelation where the bond yield goes down and the BTP yield goes up.
How should American listeners, and particularly American Wall Street listeners, interpret the decline of an ever greater negative yields in Germany?
I think they should see that as a combination of fear and scarcity. The fear is just that Europe is moving from subtrend growth into this recession that it won't be able to extract itself from. And the scarcity argument is that the ECB owns 1/3 of the German bond market. So investors who were fearful just can't find a paper to buy. Or rather, as they buy it, the rates just go ever more negative.
Are you and Jan Lois, are you still on speaking terms after his his earth-shaking paper of 10 days ago? Not a
trying to cause trouble.
Well, I know James Dimon called me last night and said, be sure to ask John about this. Jamie was concerned. I mean, Lois comes out not with a forecast, folks, but with a model of how we get a vector down to a 0% 10-year. How did you digest that, Mr. Norman?
So the idea behind that is with yields cratering around the world, there's a drive for anything with a positive interest rate, and that's one of the mechanisms by which U.S. rates could go down to 1%, even lower in the 10-year. I think where the analogy breaks down a little bit is thinking about that rally in U.S. rates as a Japanization effect, because a Japanization effect to me is about rates that go down to zero because the country is in deflation and it also fails to generate GDP growth. And I don't think the U.S. is even close to that. So I would kind of distinguish between, what happens in the bond market, which can look incredibly Japanese because investors are scared and there's a lack of paper, and what's happening in the real economy, which could actually be better.
Brilliant defense. John Norman, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your time this morning. Head of all of cross-asset analysis at JP Morgan. It is an extraordinary tape. Futures deteriorate, -14. The VIX up a stick, 21.24. What you need to know, yields lower.
And now for the news from New York City, here is Michael Barr.
Jonathan, Tom, thank you very much. President Trump travels to Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas today, tweeting that he'll meet with first responders and some of the victims of last weekend's mass shootings. Last night, Texas Senator Ted Cruz visited with first responders and emergency personnel in El Paso.
Saturday morning, El Paso and all of Texas and all of the country saw the face of evil.
Cruz called for addressing the growing problem of mental health in America. Meanwhile, President Trump is responding to the controversy from a New York Times headline after his speech Monday. Trump tweeted, "Trump urges unity versus racism" was the correct description in the first headline by the failing New York Times, but it was quickly changed to "assailing hate but not guns" after the radical left Democrats went absolutely crazy. Fake news, that's what we're up against. Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden says President Trump has encouraged white supremacy to come out of the shadows. Biden, in prepared remarks set to be delivered today in Iowa, also says there's very little that distances Trump's rhetoric from the anti-immigrant words of mass shooters like the suspect in the recent El Paso attack. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Thanks so much, Michael. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here's John Stashower.
Tom, Mets and Yankees continue to feast on last-place teams. The easy schedule, one factor in the Mets' hot streak. Outstanding pitching, another. Staff ERA since the All-Star break of under 3. It was Zach Wheeler last night. 5-0 shutout of the Marlins. So for Mickey Callaway's Mets, that's now 12 wins the last 13 games.
We understand that, who we've been playing, but that doesn't matter to us. We try to win every single game every day. And if we take that approach, you really shouldn't worry about your opponent. We're worried about ourselves playing the game the right way, the camaraderie that we have in the clubhouse. And if we do that, we have enough talent in that room to beat anybody.
Day game today at Citi Field, day off tomorrow, and then the schedule does get tougher. Big home series this weekend with Washington and Baltimore. The night after the Yankees hit 5 home runs, they hit 6. 3 by guys who had homer the night before. Brett Gardner, Austin Romine, and the red-hot Mike Tauchman. Also, Didi Gregorius, Cameron Maybin, and DJ LeMahieu. 9-4 wins, stretches the Yankee win streak to 7. 14 wins in a row at Camden Yards, and in 9 games there this season, they have belted 38 home runs. However, Gleyber Torres still injured. He hasn't missed a game, but for the second time in 3 nights, he couldn't finish due to what's called a core injury. Torres headed back to New York, will not play tonight as the Yanks go for the sweep. Giants coach Pat Shurmur would not reveal his quarterback plan for the preseason opener tomorrow against the Jets, other than to say rookie Daniel Jones will play. Shurmur would not say whether Eli Manning is going to see any action. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stanshower. Tom?
John, thanks so much. More data checks today. Futures were positive nicely, up 12. They now reversed negative 15. Dow futures at negative 144, and the VIX up a stick, 21.29. That's not the headline. The headline's in the bond market. The 10-year yield in a solid 6 basis points, 1.65%. Oil, West Texas, 52.70. It's a 49 handle in the distant future. This is Bloomberg. Off the Bloomberg terminal, looking at equities, bonds, currencies, commodities. The messages in this bond market of yields lower, curve flattening, Lukawa next. Stay with us.
Trade wars.
China responds to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs.
Volatile markets.
Yuan sinking to the weakest in a decade.
Today's the worst day of the year for the S&P 500.
For the latest headlines from around the globe, stay with Bloomberg 1130. The following is a commercial message.
An army of KPMG tax professionals has trained IBM's Watson to help clients identify R&D expenses that qualify for federal tax credits. KPMG's Brad Brown says,
leveraging Watson is letting us find the most comprehensive documentation to support the tax credit.
And engineers at client companies are spending less time talking about tax credits and more time working on R&D.
It's really disrupting ourselves. We can do it faster and better by augmenting the tax professional, not replacing the professional.
Copyright 2019 KPMG.
The story of American innovation can't be told without including New Jersey's countless contributions. The Garden State is the birthplace for nearly every major industry, from telecommunications to pharmaceuticals. Now, New Jersey is writing the next chapter of cutting-edge thinking and ingenuity. Since 2014, the New Jersey Innovation Institute has been driving the state's growth as a hub for innovation. The Newark-based not-for-profit corporation of NJIT is helping forge partnerships between big companies, startups, investors, and universities to transform intellectual capital into commercial success. Whether you lead an established business or have the next greatest idea, NJII has the people and facilities to bring your business one step closer to the future. Let NJII help you see what your business can look like 5 years from today. Visit the New Jersey Innovation Institute at njii.com. NJII, a new model for business innovation.
All money managers might seem the same, but while some give their clients cookie-cutter portfolios, Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to your goals and needs. Some only call when they have something to sell. Fisher calls regularly, so you stay informed. And while some advisors are happy to earn commissions whether you do well or not, Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when you do better. In other words, we're on your side. Maybe that's why most of our clients come from other money managers. So if you're in or nearing retirement, talk with us and find out why investors are switching to and staying with Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments. Clearly better money management. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss. Visit us at FisherInvestments.com to find out what we can do for you.
And New York Community Bank.
Hey,
New York, now that summer's here, warm up to NYCB's free checking with e-statements offer. That's right, free as in free unlimited check writing. Free of monthly service charges, free of minimum balance requirements, and free of per check fees. Best of all, it comes with the convenience of a free Visa debit card and free online banking and bill pay. Want even more from your checking account? Then look no further than the NYCB family of banks. In the New York metro area, the NYCB family of banks is comprised of banking leader New York Community Bank and its divisions, Queens County Savings Bank, Roslyn Savings Bank, Richmond County Savings Bank, Roosevelt Savings Bank, Atlantic Bank, and Garden State Community Bank. For details, visit us at mynycb.com. New York Community Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
And New York Community Bank.
Bloomberg Markets.
I'm Lisa Abramowitz.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. We'll speak to Porter Bidd of Media Tech Capital Partners on Disney and media earnings.
Plus, we'll discuss the future of central bank independence. Today at 10 on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
It's 8:45 on Wall Street. That's time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, above and beyond. Here's Peter Van.
John, the problems continue in Greenwich. That accident investigation, Connecticut Turnpike, northbound by exit 2, making things very tough on the northbound New England Thruway. Even if you're heading across Westchester County on 287, there's delays coming back into the New England Thruway. You have a crash in Newark, southbound Route 109 over by Raymond Boulevard. Looking pretty good. George Washington Bridge, 15 to 20 at the Lincoln Tunnel, 5 with the Holland. Coming into town on the east side, you're still a little busy with the 59th, Williamsburg, and RFK Triborough bridges, also the Queens Midtown Tunnel. West Side Highway, not too bad. Different story on the east side, Harlem River Drive, FDR combo. Pretty heavy 130s down into the 70s, and northbound you slow towards the Williamsburg Bridge, and then back into the 50s. Some pretty big construction delays. They're doing work Staten Island Expressway westbound between Highland Boulevard and Clove Road, alternate side, in effect today. Report sponsored by LifeLock with Norton. LifeLock with Norton Security is the identity theft protection and device security that you need against cyber threats in today's connected world. Join at LifeLock.com. Use promo code RISK for 10% off your first year. 76 degrees, Central Park, clouds, some sunshine today, gusty showers, thunderstorms, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow, chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, 85 to 90 again. Partly sunny on Friday and a high near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Bonds rallying globally in the wake of a series of dovish central bank surprises that underscored growing concern over the outlook for growth. The U.S. stock index futures reversed again. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 18 points. Dow futures down 175. NASDAQ futures down 45. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 15.30 seconds. Yield 1.65%. Yield on the 2-year 1.56%. NYMEX crude oil down 2% or $1.07 to 52.56 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.5% or $21.60 to 15.0590 an ounce. The euro 1.1199 against the dollar. The British pound at 1.2130. The yen's at 106 even. FedEx nipping another tie with Amazon.com as the e-commerce giant emerges as a competitor by building its own shipping network. FedEx saying that the ground delivery contract with Amazon won't be renewed when it expires at the end of the month. And CVS Health raising its 2019's earnings forecast for the second time this year after topping Wall Street estimates. Shares are up about 4% in early trading. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. It is 8:48 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. As a larger-than-life CEO, Warren Buffett tends to overshadow anything happening at his $500 billion conglomerate, Berkshire Hathaway. For example, when an entirely inconsequential charity lunch was recently canceled between the billionaire and a Chinese cryptocurrency entrepreneur, it wasn't unusual that the news received far more attention than Berkshire's own earnings report. Buffett's celebrity makes it easy to lose sight of the fact that Berkshire Hathaway is the most valuable company in the world outside of the technology industry. But despite owning dozens and dozens of businesses, Berkshire discloses few details about them each quarter. So often, the greatest insight investors get into how those businesses are doing is by studying other insurance companies, railroads, manufacturers, and consumer goods makers. Buffett has said he doesn't want shareholders to, quote, obsess on the details, and that doing so can be, quote, mind-numbing. His successor someday might not get to exercise the same discretion, but for Buffett, investors just smile and nod. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And Bloomberg Opinion commentaries can be heard every weekday at this time. Tom.
Karen, thanks so much. You got to rip up the script. It's good to do that with Luke Kawa of Bloomberg. He's got 3 of those 38-inch curved LG screens at his desk with 3 logins, watching what's going on in the market. And right now, Luke Kawa, you and I turn to the president. The tweets are too long for me to waste time on, but I'm going to go through them as I can. 3 more central bank cut rates. Our problem is not China. We are stronger than ever. Money is pouring into the U.S. while China is losing companies, etc. Our problem is the Federal Reserve. They have too much. They must cut rates bigger and faster and stop their ridiculous quantitative tightening, all caps now. Yield curve is at too wide a margin in no inflation. Joining us, Luke Kawa, off the president's tweets. Futures at -12, around -24 off those tweets. Dow futures at -216. What you and I notice, Luke, because we are channeling the same login on our 38-inch LG screens, is the curve changed yesterday. How did the curve change?
Essentially, the one thing that we've known for a long time is 3s, 10s have been, decidedly very inverted for a while.
It's radio, 2s, 10s.
But exactly, that's the curve that we've seen a difference in. And you essentially saw, pick your time. But yesterday, essentially, the rally in the long end is getting so fierce that it's essentially saying, not necessarily if you look at Fed funds, that the Fed is going to have to cut much deeper and much sooner than, kind of mimicking what the president's saying.
Are you seeing in the research, what you do great, Zero Hedge writes you up every other day just to keep copyright going. What you do, Luke Kawa, is you do the research. Is research talking about a Fed that can step in before September 18th?
So you did see a couple days ago on Monday, essentially, during the throes of the sell-off before we got a bounce, there were these weird moves in August Fed funds futures that did suggest maybe someone was placing a bet. A lot of people said, hey, maybe technical factors, but there were technical factors going on that were more likely to be pushing Fed funds up rather than down based on the bills deluge that we have in the pipeline. So I've seen strategist Brian Reynolds, who runs his own shop now, Ian Lingen at BMO, they both raised the prospect that maybe this is something that the market is starting to think about.
I'm 130 points off the intraday carnage of Monday. Now, granted, that's what it is, and it's technical. Did technical studies matter when you're seeing this kind of volatility day to day, down, then up, and then now down, futures -26? Did technicals work?
I mean, I think they work in terms of, we did get the bounce off the 200 days, so that is something that happened. That is something that worked. In terms of the technicals I'm watching and I'm hearing about is, for so many funds, volatility is an input to your asset allocation decisions, but they don't want to be selling just as volatility spikes. There's rules based around that. So they'll wait and they'll do it on a lag. And, normally 1 to 2 days. Yesterday, someone was telling me, hey, geez, I really thought this would be a 1 day. Maybe this is the 2 day lag just hitting this morning.
I would suggest, Luke, in the last couple of days, we've ignored commodities. I think the gentleman on Twitter emailing in, hey, dummy, mention gold 1,500, 1,507 right now. Okay, gold's up, and I get all that, but away from that, it's a commodity bear market. I look at the Bloomberg Commodity Index, just for inflation. I mean, it is ugly out there for EM.
It's ugly out there for EM. And, when you think of how much commodities have fueled business investment and are linked to business investment, this is essentially something that's just continues to tell you that the demand side and the outlook for CapEx is just so abysmal because of sluggish global growth.
Okay, so then to the president's tweets again, bring it on back. Now, we can be circuitous and say the president caused this. The Fed reacted, and the president has made it worse. That's one view. Didn't say it was my view. I can see the hate mail coming in right now. But Luke, whatever it is, the Fed has a set of cards right now, right?
The Fed really doesn't have a set of cards. I think they just have one move right now. It's cut rates. It's just a matter of how much and how soon. And I think the real fear right now is less about what the Fed's going to do and whether or not that it'll be effective. There's been for so long, this whole year, the story of the risk rally has been, we see bad things out there, but with the Fed, we shall overcome. That's what's being put to the test right now.
I mean, part of this is levels. We could look at level price or level yield. Do you have key levels on the 2-year or the 10-year?
With the speed at which they're falling, this is the fastest 5-day drop in the 10-year yield since the debt ceiling debacle in 2011. Where we're going, we don't need levels. We're just cutting through everything here.
I mean, we're cutting through. I mean, that's an important statement, folks. We're cutting through everything. And then with it is what pros do is a comparative analysis of 2 yields, and even folks, they'll look at 3 yields from time to time. I mean, as John Norman of J.P. Morgan said, do we really care about an inversion in the yield curve anymore, given the Fed ad hoc responses and also the political overlay?
I think the reason why people might care about the inversion of 2 cents is that, it's the last domino to fall, really, and it will suggest that a cutting cycle is so long that it does entail material deterioration in the real economy.
In the time that I've got left, what's going to happen, folks, is Kawa's going to go back to his 3 38-inch curved LG screens in his 3 logins, and he's going to work and he's going to publish. And Zero Hedge is going to pick it up because Kawa's a genius. Can we get out front this day? What are you going to write about today, Luke?
Today, I'm going to be talking to people who are trying to see the order flow and saying, okay, what is this selling? Is this the selling we kind of quote unquote expect from target funds that need to reduce in the face of a spike in vol?
Institutional funds that need to reduce.
Institutional funds, or is it the type of institutional funds that we actually care about? Is this more pension funds starting to step back from the market?
What's your guess on that? Exactly.
I very much hope for the sake of everyone that this is the institutional force selling, because once pension want to change risk allocation, it's the game.
But they've got a gain, Luke. I mean, they've got a massive gain in some of these medium and longer duration. I mean, they got double-digit total return. You sell it, and what do? Go to cash?
You sell it. There's still something with a yield, and we're seeing it crash very quickly. That suggests, that is what's going on right now, that we are seeing that move into safe U.S. debt.
Luke Kawa, if you see a brownout on the Upper East Side, it's because Kawa's gone back and turned on his 3 Bloomberg this morning. Mr. Kawa, and along with Damian Sassauer, Cameron Kreis, and others, doing markets for us here. Really intelligent stuff. Look for that on the terminal as well. Paul Sweeney, last time I talked to you, we had green on the screen. That was short.
That was short. I was just looking at the future chart, and we're down plumbing the lows here, the future. So, a real change in sentiment just in the last, couple hours.
Negative 27 now. And of course, this is off 3 presidential tweets. I've not cited them in entirety. To be honest, they're really long, but he goes right after the Federal Reserve, as you'd expect. And I should say, as a backdrop to this, and I've been remiss in not talking about it today, this is off ad hoc, I'll say, central banks, rather, cutting interest rates. Thailand, India, and others. You just have to say Z. Cameron, you have to say the Royal Bank, RBNZ. Is what you say in England, I learned today.
That's right.
You say
Z, yes.
For New England.
Yep.
I was quoting loony kiwi was my quote today to try to keep up with the antipodes. Did I say that right? Is antipodes? We're killing it here. Futures deteriorate, negative 30. Please stay with us. Global Wall Street, we say good morning to you. Coming up, Cameron Kreis will join us, and we will look at these markets. It's Wednesday, feeling like Monday. This is Bloomberg.
It is 8:58 on Wall Street. Time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, above and beyond. Peter Van, good morning. How are those roads looking?
All right, good morning, Paul. A little tough in Rockaway. A couple accidents on Route 80, an eastbound crash, exit 37. Westbound collision by exit 35. Still very tough with the accident investigation in Greenwich. Connecticut Turnpike northbound exit 2. Still causing residual delays on the northbound side of the New England Thruway and 287 as you make your way towards the New England Thruway. George Washington Bridge looks pretty good. 20 minutes with the Lincoln Tunnel. Holland is 30 off the Turnpike. 30 with 1 and 9. Minor delays with the Turnpike approach. And you're a little busy into town on the east side with the 59th Williamsburg and RFK Triborough bridges. Also the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Not bad. West Side Highway. You're slowing. Harlem River Drive. FDR combo 130s into the 70s. And then northbound towards the Williamsburg Bridge. A crash on the Cross Island Parkway northbound by Jamaica Avenue. 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130, 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine today. We will see gusty showers and thunderstorms later. High 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny for tomorrow. Once again, chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, 85 to 90. Then partly sunny on Friday and a high near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thrilled you're with us. It is, it's not Monday yet, but we're getting there quickly. Dow futures, green on the screen, reverse sharply, and then advance the reversal off 3 presidential tweets. Dow futures at negative 257. S&P futures, the one we usually quote, negative 28. And the VIX was one big figure, now 2.33 big figures up, 22.40. We'll do a lot of data checks here. Paul, I just got 5-minute major, not a 2-minute minor. 5-minute major. Phil emails in, says I blew it with a Kawa interview, that I didn't ask Luke Kawa whether the Toronto Maple Leafs would re-sign Mitch Marner. They're in a massive upset about, what are they going to pay him, and should he be with the restructured Leafs. I'm pleased to report, and we say good morning to Toronto on Sirius XM channel 119. Kawa says Marner will resign with the Leafs. Thank you, Phil, for getting me. I'm still in the penalty box. But joining me in the penalty box is David Wilson. As we look at the penalty box of selected equities this morning, you start with the banks, David.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at these tweets from President Trump, and it kind of fits in with the idea that banks are going to have a harder time making money. I mean, as it is, you've already got bond yields coming down. So, that's the potential for a narrower net interest margin, smaller gap between what the banks pay their depositors and what they earn on their loans and investments. At least that's sort of what's being built into the stocks here. Bank of America, the most active among the largest U.S. banks in early trading. Those shares down more than 2%. Same for J.P. Morgan Chase. Citigroup's down about 2.5%. Wells Fargo lower by about 2% as well. And then you have Walt Disney down 5%. The media and entertainment company posted fiscal third quarter earnings and sales that were well below analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Big story there. Attendance at Disney's U.S. theme parks dropped 3%. Even as the company opened a Star Wars-based attraction at Disneyland.
All the 4 people in the studio, Cameron Kreiser, Paul Sweeney, of course. And what's it cost for a day out of Orlando now per person?
Oh, boy, I don't know.
It's a big ticket. It's like sitting next to the Yankee dugout.
Exactly. It's a big. So their pricing actually was up, even though their attendance was down. So go figure.
Absolutely. I mean, FedEx. Let's move on to that stock. Yes, they're down 1%. The package delivery service said it won't renew a FedEx ground contract with Amazon.com that expires this month. Now, FedEx previously dropped the online retailer as a customer of its express unit. Amazon setting up its own delivery network and, in essence, becoming a competitor of FedEx.
3 more.
CVS Health up 4%. Second quarter earnings beat projections by the most in more than a decade. Of course, you're talking about a company that owns pharmacies and provides drug benefit services and health insurance. CVS raised its full-year profit forecast for the second time, and I'll give you two for the price of one. Match Group. This is the company that owns Tinder and other online dating sites.
That's where you swipe left
so
and right.
it's not the little car company in the United Kingdom.
No, it's not. Match Group up 15%. The company beat second quarter earnings and sales estimates and raised its full-year revenue forecast. And Match is majority owned by IAC Interactive Corp.
It's Mr. Diller, right?
Indeed, it is. Barry Diller's company, and IAC shares up 10%.
David Wilson, thank you so much. Quick there with all I got this morning. Futures at deteriorate -32. We are waiting for the president to speak. We believe in the 9 o'clock hour as well. Paul Sweeney, why don't you wander over to our esteemed guest patiently waiting here?
Cameron Christ, Bloomberg macro strategist, joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Cameron, Thomas is mentioning, the tape has really rolled over here this morning. We've got a lot of news about some of the central banks in Asia, really surprising the markets in terms of cutting rates. What do you make of what we've seen in the markets just over the last 12 hours?
Well, I think it's kind of a race to the bottom. China fixed its currency close to, but just below, 7, which I think was broadly in line with knowledgeable market expectation, but was probably a bit higher than some on the street were looking for. On a broad basis, the currency is now basically at its lows against a broader basket of currencies. And guess what? Other currencies in the region are trying to do their bit to weaken. Other central banks, I should say, in the region are trying to do their bit to weaken their currencies. The RBNZ shocked everybody with 50, even though they said they're at full employment and inflation is within the target range.
Are they beginning to tell our institutions, the president, the executive branch, the Federal Reserve System, are they beginning to tell us what to do?
Well, no, but Trump is taking it that way. Unfortunately, it's a bit like, like when Greg LeMond won the Tour de France, supposedly everyone was clean. And then in the 1990s, you first started to see a few guys doing the blood doping, and all of a sudden they took off like a shot. And then next thing you know, everybody's doing the blood doping, and the pack comes back together. And that's essentially what we're seeing here is everybody in the world can't devalue at the same time. And everyone's trying to by cutting interest rates to absurdly low levels and negative in many cases. But if everyone's doing it, there's no real relative change. So all you've done is sort of spent your pre-recession ammunition in a vain attempt to devalue, and you've gone nowhere, which has been the case.
We've done this before. What's different this time, besides the obvious negative interest rates? To me, it's a scale of it. We're afraid to clear markets.
And that's ultimately the problem, is there's this belief that central banks somehow are the underwriter of last resort, and no one's allowed to lose money anymore.
Exactly. So where did this come from, Paul?
It's interesting. I think coming out of the financial crisis, I think people are just saying that, the central banks are there to kind of save us from our own actions. But so my question is this now meaningfully raising the pressure on the Fed to be more aggressive faster?
Well, it depends on how you determine pressure, right? Certainly from the White House.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing new there. But
he's come at it with both barrels. I probably shouldn't use that now. He's come at the Fed hard again this morning, just continuing a pattern of behavior. And if the Fed were to do what, frankly, they should do, which is tell markets that they're smoking crack and that the economy doesn't merit anything like the degree of monetary easing that's in the price, then the risk is that you would see the dollar shoot higher, which would then perhaps put some pressure back on the Fed.
On Monday, we were equity-centric, and today with this bond move and curve flattening, the vanilla 2-10 spread 7.85 basis points. All you need to know if you don't understand that number is we've gone 14 to 7 basis points, which shows you the velocity towards that important zero level. The equity markets, what is the significance if futures or the opening cash market price in lower than the daily close Monday or the intraday carnage of Monday?
Well, here's the thing, is that you had the S&P yesterday rally right back to where it broke down from. There was a nice trend line at 28.85.
Chris Verone said it was on convincing bounce.
And I wrote a thing yesterday saying it was dead cat bounce.
He got it from you.
Well, there you go. But if you're a sort of a tactical punter, it was a dream scenario yesterday. Is you rallied back to where you could sell it with a very tight stop loss, and it looks like some people have availed themselves of the opportunity. But the thing we have to remember is that volatility clusters, and courtesy of the president's re-escalation of the trade war yet again, we're now suddenly in a more volatile environment.
Just so you know, I don't use stop losses. I don't believe in them. I have what are called stop gains.
Yes.
I have stop gains, and they've worked out really well. Cameron, thank you so much. He will go back. His desk is near Luke Kawa's desk. Luke has those 3 38-inch LG curved screens he uses. With the 3, is the glow, is the radiation glow from Luke's desk too much for you?
I don't know, I wear sunglasses. Man.
You have to wear sunglasses. The whole team's got that. It's the Johnny Bowers sunglasses like the goalie wore up in Toronto years ago. Cameron Crease, thank you so much. Paul Sweeney, we got to walk through the data and talk about it as we do. Let's begin with equities. New low right now, -33. Dow futures, -281, and the VIX 2.61. Disney's not at play here. I mean, do I care about earnings granularity, Paul Sweeney, when I got a move like this?
You do. It was a real disappointment, both on the bottom line, but then they missed revenue by $1 billion, and
so did Unicredit, and on and on and on.
Exactly. So, but they had this is the first quarter where they had the consolidated in 21st Century Fox, and it was just a mess, and even the analysts on the street were just like grasping at straws here.
I played Avril Lavigne earlier, because Michael Nathanson was talking it up. It was great. Yield market 1.62 on a 10-year. The last time I looked, it was 1.64. That's down 8 basis points. 30-year bond is just simply stunning, 2.1488. The 2-year yield, which we've barely discussed this morning, in 4 basis points, 1.54%. We're watching the 2s10 spread at 8 basis points right now. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, much more to speak of. This is Bloomberg.
Let's get national headlines right now with Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Tom. Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke is attending an El Paso, Texas community rally timed to serve as a counter to President Trump's visit. An El Paso native, O'Rourke will address the El Paso Strong event at a park this afternoon during Trump's visit. O'Rourke is also attending a makeshift memorial outside the Walmart where gunmen killed 22 people. President Trump stepped up his assault on the Federal Reserve in a series of morning tweets that renewed his demand for bigger and faster interest rate cuts. In one tweet, the president said, "Incompetence is a terrible thing to watch, especially when things could be taken care of so easily. We will win anyway." Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Paul.
Michael, thank you so much. We are watching these futures here 19 minutes before the cash open. S&P down 33 at the lows. Dow down 275. This is Bloomberg.
Coming up, we do more data checks. Futures at -34. Dow futures at -290. Stay with us coast to coast. This is Bloomberg.
Politics, policy, power, and law.
I'm Amy Morris.
I'm June Grosso.
President Trump heads to El Paso to meet with shooting survivors.
And the Supreme Court weighs a Second Amendment showdown.
Today at noon on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Success takes hard work. Turning that into a legacy takes discipline. PPAC Private is the dedicated wealth management division of PPAC Gladstone Bank. For nearly 100 years, we've been providing superior financial solutions that span generations. Our unparalleled service and disciplined approach will help you make the most of your success. Visit ppacprivate.com today. PPAC Private. Your legacy, our discipline. Not FDIC insured, no bank guarantee, may lose value.
Attention investors. Stocks got you sideways. Worried about volatility? Then diversify into Class A income-producing property units for up to 21% cash flow. National Realty's Class A property fund includes only prime income-producing new construction properties. These are built far below market value in Brooklyn, Hoboken, West New York, and Delray Beach, Florida. You're secured on high-demand mid-rises. You're diversified with income from multiple properties. You're prioritized in cash flow with substantial bank-appraised equity and solid real estate backing you. National has a 12-year track record of success with over $800 million of property managed. Now's the time to diversify with up to 21% apartment-backed financial units for your IRA or monthly cash flow. Once you see these Class A locations, you'll wonder what took you so long to call 201-210-2727. Call 201-210-2727. An offer to buy or sell any security is only made by our private placement memorandum. Read it first and invest wisely. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. National is a real estate development firm. See us at nria.net.
Listen to the Behind the Scenes podcast, an in-depth and personal conversation with the investors, economists, and CEOs coming to the Bloomberg radio studios. On the latest episode, we sit down with former Massachusetts governor and presidential candidate Bill Weld.
I've had a fine career in international business, a lot of it in Asia and Africa. Very interesting stuff.
The Behind the Scenes podcast, brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Located on the campus of the Hebrew Home at Riverdale, River Spring Rehabilitation is New York's premier rehabilitation center, specializing in older adults. River Spring Rehabilitation helps patients get home faster, feeling better and with greater function. River Spring specializes in short-term inpatient rehabilitation for a wide variety of major health conditions, giving patients access to the experience and expertise of dedicated physicians, nurses, physical, occupational, and speech therapists. Whether knee replacement, stroke, or surgery, River Spring Rehabilitation provides some of the nation's most comprehensive and innovative services to get your loved one back on track as quickly as possible. River Spring Rehabilitation's dedicated team understands that every patient is different. River Spring's personalized care plan makes recovery a positive, meaningful journey. Call 800-56-SENIOR today. That's 800-567-3646 or visit riversspringhealth.org/rehabilitation.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
I'm Doug Krisner. Is the yuan breaking 7 against the dollar a sign of more weakness to come? And how much has the U.S.-China trade war elevated the risk of a global recession? Tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
It is 9:15 on Wall Street. Time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, above and beyond. Peter Van, how are those rails and roads looking?
It's still a little tough call in Greenwich. This accident investigation, northbound Connecticut Turnpike, been out there all morning by exit 2. It's causing some pretty big residual delays on the northbound New England Thruway and also on Route 287 across Westchester County as you make your way over towards the New England Thruway. You have a crash in Bloomfield, Garden State Parkway south on exit 147. Couple accidents in Rockaway eastbound 80, exit 37, westbound 80 by exit 35. George Washington Bridge looks pretty good. 5 to 10 minutes, both the Lincoln and Holland tunnels. 59th Street Bridge busy into town on the east side, along with the Williamsburg and RFK Triborough bridges, along with the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Once you're in, West Side Highway is not too bad. Different story on the east side. You're very heavy with the Harlem River Drive FDR combo. 130s down into the 50s. An accident on the Whitestone Expressway southbound over by the Whitestone Bridge. Report is sponsored by LifeLock with Norton. LifeLock with Norton Security is the identity theft protection and device security that you need against cyber threats in today's connected world. You can join at lifelock.com. Use promo code RISK for 10% off your first year. 76 degrees, Central Park, clouds, some sunshine today. Watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow, but still a chance of an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. Again, 85 to 90. Partly sunny Friday, near 85. Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. The Bloomberg Futures Report brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new Micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at ibkr.com/CME Mini. U.S. stock index futures are slumping. Bonds rallying globally after a series of dovish central bank surprises underscored growth concern over the outlook for growth. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 36 points. Dow futures down 295. NASDAQ futures down 91. The DAX in Germany's up 0.25%. 10-year Treasury up 22.30 seconds. The yield 1.62%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.54%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.6% or $1.38 to $52.25 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.6% or $23.90 to $15.08 an ounce. The euro, 1.1215 against the dollar. The British pound, 1.2141, and the yen is at 105.81. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Thank you for those extra data checks today. Karen Moscow. Again, futures at negative 35 from a positive 12 a distant 4 hours ago. Here's the VIX. This is the measurement of the volatility that everybody looks at. Pre-Powell, 14. Outrageous move to 16, then back to 14. Then a big move up to 18. Oh, my word, the sweat, Paul Sweeney. And then 18 to almost 25. That Monday was great.
Yep.
All clear, just below 20. And we're now at a 23.25, easily 60% back to the angst of Monday.
Exactly
I hope
right.
that was somewhat clear. Charts on radio rock.
They do. And then you just captured what we've seen in the equity markets of volatility so far this week. And looks like it's going to be another rocky day today in the equity markets, helping us kind of navigate what we can expect with all things equity. We welcome our good friend Gina Martin Adams. She is the chief equity strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. She joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Gina, thanks so much for making the long walk up to our studio.
She has an entourage.
Exactly. So give us a sense of kind of how you're framing the volatility we've seen in the equity markets just this week.
Yeah, well, I think it's, reflective of a market that certainly is weakening very substantially on a technical basis. And just to put things in perspective, the 3% decline on Monday, 3% declines are very, very rare in the broader equity market on a single day basis. And they usually only occur in the midst of corrections that exceed 10%. So we put it out a note on Tuesday morning saying, look, it's highly unlikely that we're going to shake this off. There have only been 2 instances, indeed, in which a 3% correction was not in the midst of a 10% or greater correction since 2009. So 96% of the time, it means you're in for a wild ride. We think we're still in for a wild ride. What's really interesting today is initially overseas, the interpretation of these moves by global central banks was pretty positive. And then as soon as the traders came into the U.S. this morning, it all sort of, the floor fell out from under the market. And I think that's reflective of the current sentiment, which is no matter what monetary policymakers do, we're more concerned about earnings right now. And until there is some form of cooperative resolution with respect to trade, even if it's a baby step forward, the market is going to remain very, very volatile.
Right. So it's trade, and it's, I think as we get through pretty much this quarter's earnings, what did you hear from a lot of the companies as it relates to how are the trade uncertainties impacting their businesses? Is there any themes you guys have picked up?
Yeah, so there are a lot of themes. I mean, I would say that the biggest theme is that it's just more about China growth as opposed to tariffs so far. And I think that that's largely because the tariffs on the products that are getting imported from China are on companies that are generally pretty flexible. They imported a lot before the tariffs were put in place. There's a lot of supply chain angst in the tech sector with respect to China. But most of this is really more about slowing global growth than it is specifically about tariffs. So it's more about the byproduct or the snowball effect of tariffs on global growth, which is suppressing economic activity.
Gina Martin Adams, I know you don't speak to Carl Riccadonna, which is probably a good
Never.
policy, but how do you fold anyone's economic forecast into equity analysis now? Do you just take it right to a interpolation of what the revenue lines are going to be? What do you do with economic forecasts right now?
Well, as you know, Tom, I was an economist before I became a strategist, and I spent a good 5 years in reform
John Tucker,
school.
Did we know this?
We were trying to keep it quiet.
Is this a resume that we need to review?
I will say it's an incredible challenge because I had to spend a good 5 years trying to figure out, what really is relevant from the economic data for markets, and it truly is a subset of indicators that actually matter for stocks. And what matters are things like initial claims, the unemployment rate, interest rates, and absolutely order flow. And the orders are the weakest component of the economic outlook right now, and that is definitely weighing on earnings expectations for companies. But they're not one and the same. Stocks are not representative of the economy all the time, and the economy is not always representative of stocks.
And is it your sense that the Federal Reserve, does the Federal Reserve have enough arrows in the quiver to kind of help the equity markets in a meaningful way going forward?
Yeah, so I do think so. I don't think you need to dismiss the Fed, say. Certainly what happens when liquidity increases, when the Fed moves to an easier stance, is you naturally have higher valuation multiples that result. The problem is that there is that offset. The Fed can only do so much because, yes, you have to rely on the transmission mechanism of monetary policy to actually effectively create some sort of better economic growth outlook, and many have argued that policy is broken. But the other side of this is, no matter what you think about the broader economy, when liquidity is ample, it's going to inflate asset price valuations. So the offset is, yes, valuations may expand, but that valuation expansion can only do so much in the face of deteriorating earnings on the other side of the price equation. So I think the Fed can do some. Can they manufacture economic growth out of nowhere? No. But they can help to soothe the pain of what is becoming a pretty negative outlook, or at least a stagnant outlook for earnings growth.
Gina, thank you for the updates the last number of days. Our team has been extraordinary. How many people do you have down in the salt mine?
No.
In equity, it's like 40,
on the equity
50?
Strategy team, we have 12.
All ex-economists, right?
Yeah, no, not all ex-economists, thank God. Not all carrying my sins. But on the broad BI team, there's 300 now.
Yeah, Gina Martin Adams, thank you so much. It's been hugely valuable to us to call upon Bloomberg Intelligence. Futures negative 33, improve negative 30. I'm trying to be positive, folks. Dow futures at negative 260 as well. The story, without question, is the lead of the yield markets. A 2-year yield, 1.53%. 30-year bond, 2.15%. Extraordinary. This is Bruce. I go to bed feeling the same way. I ain't nothing but tired. Coming up, we'll do more data checks to get the market open. The futures at negative 30. The most interesting open. The president's scheduled to speak. We'll see on that. This is Bloomberg.
The U.S. Open Tennis Championships, the world's grandest slam. It's built by the screams of the fans, by the soul of the players. It's built with every ace, every cheer, every victory and defeat. But above all, it's built to witness live. So say you were there. The U.S. Open Tennis Championships, August 26th through September 8th. Get your tickets now at usopen.org.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
More than just a game, baseball is big business. For the Atlanta Braves, this meant bringing a $1 billion stadium project to life through a public-private partnership, creating the Battery, a mixed-use development that turned an underdeveloped area into a thriving community.
Always on the cutting edge of community development, Cohn Resnick advises industry participants on tax credits, affordable housing, opportunity zones, and more, helping communities reach their full potential. Explore more at cohnresnick.com/MLB. Cohn Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax. Transform your game.
Dear Calvary Hospital, when my mom was suffering at the end of her life, we knew that Calvary's expert at-home care was the solution. After all, it was only 10 years earlier that your expert Calvary at-home staff relieved my dad's pain and anguish during his final days at home. What was most remarkable, that both times you not only provided pain-free comfort and care for our parents, but you also turned a stressful situation filled with anxiety and uncertainty into a peaceful one for all of us. Twice, you created a quality of life that we never knew was possible during these times. We will never forget what you did for our dad, our mom, and us. Julianne Federuso.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. With Calvary at Home, experience our unique Calvary care right in your own home. Call us today at 718-518-2465.
It is 9:28 on Wall Street. Time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, above and beyond. Peter Van, how are those roads looking this morning?
A little tough. Garden State Parkway, Paul, Bloomfield southbound. You have a crash by exit 147. Couple collisions. In Rockaway, eastbound 80, exit 37, the westbound side by exit 35, and still the accident investigation in Greenwich, Connecticut Turnpike, northbound exit 2, causing big delays on the New England Thruway and Route 287. George Washington Bridge looks pretty good. Minor delays with the Lincoln Tunnel. Holland is 5 minutes off the Turnpike, 20 minutes with Route 1 and 9. Whitestone Bridge, if you're Queensbound, watch out for a collision. If you're heading into the city on the east side, you're busy with the 59th and Williamsburg bridges, also the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Not bad, West Side Highway, but a different story on the east side where you're very busy. Harlem River Drive, FDR combo, 130s into the 50s. Northbound, you slow towards the Williamsburg Bridge. At 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130. 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine today. Watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms. Definitely going to cause some delays with the airports later. We'll have a high 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow. Once again, chance of an afternoon shower and thunderstorm, 85 to 90. Then partly sunny on Friday and a high of 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg surveillance continues.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney, and the S&P 500 lower at the open, down 1.1% or 30 points to 2851. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1.3% or 326 points to 25,705. The Nasdaq's down 1.1% or 82 points to 7750. 10-year Treasury up 24/32, the yield 1.62%. Yield on the 2-year 1.52%. NYMEX crude oil down 2.9% at $1.55 to $52.10 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.7% or $24.80 to $15.09 an ounce. The euro at 1.1223 against the dollar, and the yen is at 105.71. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Again, to paint the picture, equities opening up. We need 10 minutes to get them all open and all that. Yields have come in the last 10 minutes, ever lower yields. The 10-year yield just breaching 1.62, 1.6198. We are advantaged. We're going to wait for the president here, scheduled to speak in a bit. I believe it's about an 11-minute feed we'll get. We are hugely advantaged in that I just put out on Twitter the chart of the VIX, and we should talk to somebody who really spends 24/7 looking at this odd thing that we all look at to go down the investment street. Randy Frederick is Vice President of Trading and Derivatives at Schwab, and he's on speaking terms with Liz Ann Saunders, which is a good thing. And with this, Randy, is what we get wrong in our usage of the VIX. What do we do wrong every day on the VIX?
Well, I think a lot of people look at the VIX and they think of it as an instantaneous read on volatility. What they don't realize is the VIX is actually intended to be a forecast of volatility 30 days in the future. So I think the other big mistake I think many people make is there are a lot of instruments, whether it's an ETF, an ETN, a futures contract, an options contract, that are supposed to be tied directly to the VIX index that really aren't. They're all tied to the VIX future. So I think the biggest mistake, and I warn people about this all the time, is be careful trading any product that appears to be tied to the index, because they're not. they're tied to the futures, in which case they don't move nearly as much as the index says.
Yeah, Randy sends me love notes. Tom, you don't know what you're talking about. Dow negative 400, Paul.
Randy, so we had said Gina Martin Adams from Bloomberg Intelligence on a few minutes ago, and she was suggesting that anytime you see a 3% move, like on the downside, like we saw on Monday, that suggests that could be something broader, something in the context of a 10% move. Is that something that you subscribe to?
I don't know if I would say that's always the case, but certainly when you start to see those types of moves, and I always remind people that volatile markets mean that you're going to get large moves in both directions. I think yesterday's bounce back was a good example of that. Then we see weakness again this morning. In fact, today we've had both directions. The pre-markets futures were up quite a bit a few hours ago, and now they're already showing sharply lower open. So you do see those types of moves. What concerns me from a technical standpoint right now is that there's not a whole lot of support in the S&P 500 until you get down to the 200-day moving average, and really that's a soft support. The solid support doesn't get all the way down until you hit that 10% correction line, which is what I'm thinking. If we don't get a resolution on this trade issue, which I don't think we're going to get anytime soon, we're going to probably revisit that 10% pullback.
Was there anything on the earnings front that maybe give you a little bit of support to this market? It seemed like it came in a little bit better than expected, but still nobody's looking for any earnings rebound, it seems like, this year.
Yeah, I mean, we're about 85% of the way through earnings season at this point, and I was never a subscriber to the idea that we're going to have this earnings recession. What happens is that companies always lowball the analysts. They tend to beat the estimates. We've had outperformance again this quarter, just like we had last quarter. 75+% of the companies have beaten the earnings targets. We've got at least 1.5 to 2% earnings growth, which the expectation prior to the beginning of earnings season was around flat to maybe down a few tenths of a percent. So we've outperformed in that respect. This could be the last good quarter, though. If the tariffs kick in on 9/1 as has been threatened, September could be a very bad month for earnings, and that could wipe out any gains that may have come in July and August. And so I'm concerned that this may be the last good quarter, but it has been a good quarter so far.
So when you take a look at some of the options trading out there, and how are traders positioning themselves for the remainder of the year? Are they kind of taking a cautious view here?
Well, not too many people position with options for the remainder of the year. That's just a little too far out. Option traders tend to be a lot more short term. But I will say that I put out a research report every Friday that I've been publishing on Schwab's website for close to 12 years now. And it's an outlook just for the week. This last Friday's report was the first report that I was fully bearish.
Randy, we got to interrupt, please. We've got to go to the President of the United States at the South Portico on the White House lawn moments ago. Here is President Trump.
I'll be going with the First Lady, and it's a terrific opportunity, really, to congratulate some of the police and law enforcement. The job they've done was incredible, really incredible. So my critics are political people. They're trying to make points. In many cases, they're running for president, and they're very low in the polls. A couple of them in particular, very low in the polls. If you look at Dayton, that was the person that supported, I guess you would say, Bernie Sanders, I understood. Antifa, I understood. Elizabeth Warren, I understood. Had nothing to do with President Trump. So these are people that are looking for political gain. I don't think they're getting it, and as much as possible, I've tried to stay out of that. Well, I do agree, but I think we have toned it down. We've been getting hit left and right from everybody. Many of the people I don't know, a couple of people from Texas, political people from Texas that aren't doing very well. I guess somebody said the mayor, I had one very nice conversation with the mayor of Dayton, could not have been nicer. And then she goes and says, I tried to call her. Well, I spoke to her, and I didn't receive any calls. So they're trying to make political points. I don't think it works because, I would like to stay out of the political fray. As I was saying, and as just came out, the Dayton situation, he was a fan of Antifa. He was a fan of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Nothing to do with Trump, but nobody ever mentions that. Say it. don't blame Elizabeth Warren, and I don't blame Bernie Sanders in the case of Ohio, and I don't blame anybody. I blame these are sick people. These are people that are really mentally ill, mentally disturbed. It's a mental problem, and we're going to be meeting with the members of Congress. I've already got meetings scheduled, and I have had plenty of talks over the last 2 days, and I think something's going to be come up with. We're going to come up with something that's going to be really very good, beyond anything that's been done so far. Well, we're going to see where we are. We're dealing with leadership right now. And you know, you have two sides that are very different on this issue. And let's say all good people, but two sides that are very different. If we get close, I will bring them back. But it has to be, you know, we have to see where we are with leadership. Normally, this has been really a decision. Congress gets together and they try and do something. But if you look over the last 30 years, not a lot has been done. Well, I'm looking to do background checks. I think background checks are important. I don't want to put guns into the hands of mentally unstable people or people with rage or hate, sick people. I don't want to. I'm all in favor of it. Well, I can tell you that there is no political appetite for that at this moment. If you look at, you could speak, you could do your own polling, and there's no political appetite from it from the standpoint of the legislature, but I will certainly bring that up. I'll bring that up as one of the points. There's a great appetite, and I mean a very strong appetite, for background checks, and I think we can bring up background checks like we've never had before. I think both Republican and Democrat are getting close to a bill to doing something on background checks. South Korea and I have made a deal. They've agreed to pay a lot more money toward the United States. As you know, we've got 32,000 soldiers on South Korean soil, and we've been helping them for about 82 years, and we get nothing. We get virtually nothing. And South Korea and I have made a deal where they're paying a lot more money, and they're going to pay a lot more money. And the relationship is a very good one. But I felt all along, I felt for years it was a very unfair one. So they've agreed to pay a lot more, and they will agree to pay a lot more than that. And we're with them. We're with them. So you have to have a political appetite within Congress. And so far, I haven't not seen that. I mean, I can only do what I can do. I think there's a great appetite to do something with regard to making sure that mentally unstable, seriously ill people aren't carrying guns. And I've never seen the appetite as strong as it is now. I have not seen it with regard to certain types of weapons. I am concerned about the rise of any group of hate. I don't like it. Any group of hate. I am, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's any other kind of supremacy, whether it's Antifa, whether it's any group of hate, I am very concerned about it, and I'll do something about it. No, I don't think my rhetoric has at all. I think my rhetoric is a very, it brings people together. Our country is doing incredibly well. China is not doing well. If you look at the trade situation, China just admitted yesterday that they've been a currency manipulator. First time they've ever been called out. Companies are moving out of China by the thousands, and our country is doing very well. We're going to see how it all works out. Somebody had to do this with China because they were taking hundreds of billions of dollars a year out of the United States, and somebody had to make a stand. So I think our country is doing really well. than is anticipated. I would have anticipated. I would have maybe anticipated even more, but ultimately it's going to go much higher than it ever would have gone because China was like an anchor on us. China was killing us with unfair trade deals. The people that allowed that to happen are a disgrace. China, what they were doing to us for years and years, taking hundreds of billions of dollars out, stealing intellectual property, targeting our farmers, all of that's ending, and they understand that. That's right. I'll be convincing some people to do things that they don't want to do, and that means people in Congress. But you get a lot of people on one side, and you have a lot of people on the other. But I have a lot of influence with a lot of people, and I want to convince them to do the right thing. And I will tell you, we've made a lot of headway in the last 3 days, a lot of headway.
You and the shooter in El Paso use that same language. Do you regret that?
I think that illegal immigration, you're talking about illegal immigration, huh? Yes? I think illegal immigration is a terrible thing for this country. I think you have to come in legally. Ideally, you have to come in through merit. We need people coming in because we have many companies coming into our country. They're pouring in. And I think illegal immigration is a very bad thing for our country. I think open borders are a very bad thing for our country. And we're stopping. We're building a wall right now. We won the lawsuit in the Supreme Court 2 weeks ago. The wall is well under construction. It's being built at a rapid pace. We need that. We need strong immigration laws. But we want to allow millions of people to come in because we need them. We have companies coming in from Japan, all over Europe, all over Asia. They're opening up companies here. They need people to work. We have a very low unemployment rate. So I believe we have to have legal immigration, not illegal immigration. I think the market reaction is to be expected. I might have expected even more. At some point, as I just said, we have to take on China. They've been taking us to the cleaners for 25 years. This should have been done long before me as the president. You know the story better than anybody. You know it better than I do, frankly. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year taken out of our country, stealing intellectual property. And you know what? We right now, we're sitting on top. We have money pouring in. We have powerful companies, strong companies. China's losing so many. They're losing thousands and thousands of companies are leaving China now because of the tariffs. And we're in a very good position as to whether or not a deal will be made. I will tell you this. China would like to make a deal very badly. Well, you know, Joe is a pretty incompetent guy. I've watched his interviews. I've watched what he said and how he said it. And I wouldn't have rated him very high in the first place. But Joe Biden has truly lost his fastball. That I can tell you. Thank you.
The President of the United States waving goodbye to the attending press. This is at the South Portico of the White House, walking back and forth along the gauntlet north to south, now standing off on the lawn. This was taped moments ago as he waits for the First Lady and they walk across the South Lawn to a helicopter to two difficult and emotional trips to Dayton and El Paso. There was market-moving comments there, not only Paul Sweeney when they were made, but actually within this worldwide refeed that all the different networks get. We were at negative 380 and all of a sudden down 200 points at negative 580 on the Dow.
Yeah, exactly right. Off about 2.2% on the Dow, almost about 1.9% on the S&P. So just in the last several minutes, really seen kind of roll over a little bit.
Not at the lows that we saw on Monday, but on a VIX basis near 25. We're not there yet, 23.67. And in Europe, a momentous tick moments ago, and again, somewhat off the president's comments, the 10-year German yield becomes ever more negative, breaching negative 0.60, and that will be something for Asia to digest in the European morning as well. Right now, the Dow, negative 566. We'll move on with discussions of a wonderful interview, and that means that David Rubenstein peer-to-peer preview, always brought to you by Wells Fargo Healthcare Banking. Wells Fargo bankers, they average over 15 years of experience in healthcare financing. They're making a difference where it matters. Find out more at wellsfargo.com/healthcare banking. And joining us now with a wonderful set of interviews over the years is David Rubenstein. What is it like to speak to the gentleman number one in his class at West Point, David?
He's obviously a very smart person. Now, to be first in your class in West Point is not an easy thing to do. But it wasn't just West Point. He was near the top of his class at Harvard Law School as well. So a very smart person who came to be Secretary of State somewhat unexpectedly. He had been a member of Congress, was in his third term, did not know Donald Trump, and during the transition, he was recommended by other members of the House. Trump met him, offered him a CIA job, and in that job, he really bonded with President Trump. And then when President Trump made his change as Secretary of State, he asked Mike Pompeo to do the job.
Well, a number of themes here. We're also seeing the president now live leaving Joint Base Andrews for, I believe, Dayton. Right now, here's David Rubenstein with the Secretary of State on presidential plans.
My experience is that sometimes when people get close to a president, they see the job up close, they say, well, I can do that job too. Has that occurred to you that maybe you could do the job, and would you have any interest in running for president at some point in your life?
I try to answer this consistently. I have never been able to predict what my next gig will be. I hope I've left things a little bit better, and I do feel an obligation. America's given me an awful lot, and if I thought I could do a good turn, there's nothing I wouldn't consider doing for America.
A graceful answer to an exceptionally rude question. David, what else did you say?
I would say that in Washington speak, that means, yes, I would like to be president. Maybe I will consider doing it. Nobody actually says years in advance they're going to run for president, but I think most people, I asked him as well, is he going to run for the Senate seat, as Mitch McConnell was asked him to do? I think he pretty much said he wasn't going to do that.
Well, that's where I wanted to go. Yeah, tell us, David, about this idea of the Secretary of State running for Senate. That's pretty much an original idea, isn't it?
Well, most people who have been Secretary of State, that's the cap of their career, but sometimes they run for president, as we saw with Hillary Clinton. And obviously, earlier in our country's history, some of the Secretaries of State became president. But I would say that in his case, why would he need to be a senator from Kansas? Because if you're a senator from Kansas, if you run for the Senate from Kansas, you could lose, and therefore your career as potential president is over. You win, you might be in the minority, and you will be a freshman senator. You have very little power relative to what you have had as Secretary of State. So I think you can run around, make speeches, and do lots of things waiting to run for president as a former Secretary of State, and you can make some money during that period of time. If you're a senator, you're constrained in how much money you can make, and also you have to show up for votes and so forth. I don't think it's a great way to run for president.
So, David, there are so many, obviously, hot spots around the world that I'm sure is keeping Secretary of State Michael Pompeo busy these days. List off kind of some of the areas that you discussed. What are some of his thoughts on Iran, for example, North Korea, so many areas of discussion?
Well, we covered a lot in the period of time, and Iran, he's made it clear that we're going to keep the Straits of Hormuz open, so that's what he said. He didn't really get into what we're going to do against Iran if Iran were to attack us, but he made it clear we're going to keep the Straits open. Well, North Korea, he wasn't that optimistic about a new summit occurring anytime soon, but he didn't contradict anything that President Trump has said on North Korea. I would say that he has done a very good job as Secretary of State and obviously as CIA Director in not getting in the way of what President Trump has said. In other words, President Trump has not said any negative things about him, no negative tweets. He obviously likes him. I can see why. He's very smart, and his positions tend to be the same as President Trump's. But most cabinet secretaries have run afoul of President Trump at some point or another, but this secretary has not.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just wondering, it's interesting. Is his plans to stay on as long as the president wants him in that position, or what is his kind of his near-term thoughts about his career?
I asked him, and he said, well, if the president wanted him to stay in a second term, a presumed second term, he would do so for a while. And so it wasn't clear how long he would stay. I think it would be unlikely he would stay for an entire second term, but he did make that clear.
Yeah. David, I just want to find a quick question here. We're down to record lows. We've blown through the Monday intraday lows as well. What does this volatility, what does this emotion of trade, was it due to private equity and the other parts of your finance?
On private equity, we tend to take longer-term perspectives. Nobody likes the stock market to go down dramatically, but sometimes it does produce buying opportunities. But I think we take a longer-term perspective, so we're not that worried about it. I do think, though, with respect to people who invest in China, we do have some concerns about the U.S.-China relationship and hope that a trade deal can be done, even if it's not as comprehensive as people originally wanted.
Right.
Some trade deal would be better than no trade deal.
David, thank you so much. Generous of your time. Mr. Rubenstein, of course, with terrific interviews. I still speak of the Jeff Bezos interview of years ago, this time around with the Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo. David Rubenstein, peer-to-peer. Of course, you can see that on Bloomberg Television tonight, 9 p.m. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. on radio. Really must listen. A refreshing, different take with the Secretary of State. Paul, I've got a 5-day chart. Make that a 4-day chart. Intraday of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We have opened, we're still looking for the first bid of the morning, I would suggest.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we saw those futures just kind of roll over, before the opening.
Yeah,
and
negative 300, but that's not what I see now.
Exactly right. So we're down here again, now off over 2% on the Dow, 1.7% on the S&P. So clearly, the global trade issue continues to roil the markets. We had those surprise rate cuts coming out of Asia, suggesting that that part of the world is certainly concerned about the U.S.-China trade issues, because there's the spillover effects you would expect would be pretty acute for those regions of the world. So
I'm going to bring up an intraday here right now, folks. We're really advantaged by having the Bloomberg with us. I'm going to do the same 4-day chart on the 10-year yield. I got the function right. And we've come down to new lows. To put things in perspective, the worst of the 10-year yield on Monday was, I'm going to call it a 1.71. We are enjoying breaching the equity lows 10 basis points in, 1.61 with curve flattening. Paul, what does that signal that we're enjoying a new test of equities with a yield that, I will use the words, it's an adverb, I'm not allowed to use adverbs, but we're in substantially on the 10-year yield.
Exactly, 1.61 on the 10-year. That's up 30 seconds just today, and I think it's just suggesting, boy, it's we see it time and again rushing into the safe haven of U.S. Treasuries. I know you also like to quote the yen. That is stronger today.
Thank you.
So we see that we see that across the board here, and again, I think it just goes to what we woke up to this morning with some of these surprise rate cuts coming out of Asia, just kind of once again raising the global trade uncertainties that seem to be impacting the markets. And we heard from Gina Martin Adams, when she looks at the earnings from some of the big global companies, clearly she's seeing that in some of the earnings forecasts. CEOs are just a little cautious.
Well, we saw that with European banking today as well. The yen is not through to new strength. Again, that's a flight to quality. A fear trade is a generalization, and the yen with the Dow negative 504. The yen not through to the strength of early Tuesday morning, a 105.50-ish or so. What's the unspoken here? West Texas Intermediate, 51.55, down $2. I guess we can talk, Paul, with the emotion out there of a 49 print on West Texas. We don't have it yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and when we talk to energy analysts, the folks who really follow crude oil on a day-to-day basis, they're always talking about the supply and the demand, and their supply models and demand models. To me, it seems to be what's really driving oil is the demand picture. That's really running the day here, and people obviously once again
less
demand, lower price, and you can talk about the supply of shale coming out of the U.S., but it just seems to be really driven by the perceptions of global growth, and what we're seeing here is kind of consistent with what we're seeing in the equities and in the credit markets.
Right. Well, you mentioned credit. That's right where I wanted to go, and that you bring it over, folks. Here with the Dow, a little bit of a lift, negative 478 off of that negative 500 of moments ago. It comes over to the credit market, and I know that every expert tells us they cleared out the carnage of high-yield energy, but it's still there.
Yeah, and people are concerned.
A number of research notes this morning showing that.
Exactly right. You take a look at some of those energy companies still highly levered in. I have to quote your favorite, Bitcoin, Tom. Up another 3% today, kind of trading a little bit in line with gold. So we're up on 12,000 on
Gold's
Bitcoin.
Up 36, 15, 19. Yep. What's the linkage of gold to Bitcoin?
I leave that to Mike McGlone, but he's telling me there is a linkage. That Bitcoin, believe it or not, for some people view it as I hate to even use the word safe haven. It's a store of value.
Keep going. I'll let you
I'm digging the hole. Exactly.
How about you and I do a co-write with Pharaoh, the three of us?
Exactly.
The gnomes of Bitcoin. Does that work out?
Up another 3% today.
Wait! I just figured it out. Pharaoh's starting his 6-week vacation in Zurich. He's going over there to set up a Swiss bank account.
Exactly right.
That's
he knows
what he's doing.
Exactly.
I see him on the phone with one of those fancy Swiss bankers.
Yeah.
Anyways, this has been great. A major shout out to Team Surveillance. Just blown it up today. Thank you particularly John Norman of JP Morgan. We are produced by Richard Truman. Ken Fellio does our Avril Lavigne.
It is 9:58 on Wall Street. Time for Land Rover Drive Time Traffic. We do it every 15 minutes. Visit your tri-state area Land Rover retailer for special lease and finance offers. Land Rover, above and beyond. Peter Van, how are those rails and roads looking?
Very tough if you're Queensbound, Paul. The Whitestone Bridge, in fact, has been closed down now if you're Queensbound with a crash. You have delays still into the city on the east side with the 59th and the Williamsburg bridges, also the Queens Midtown Tunnel. George Washington Bridge looks pretty good. Same for the Lincoln Tunnel. Holland Tunnel is just busy off the 1 and 9 approach, 20 minutes. You look great with the Turnpike. No problems. West Side Highway, you're still slowing with the Heartland River Drive 50R combo. 130s into the 50s. Northbound delays towards the Williamsburg Bridge. That accident investigation in Greenwich on the Connecticut Turnpike, northbound exit 2. Huge delays because of this northbound on the New England Thruway. Report is sponsored by UTOG, Manhattan's most reliable car service. You can visit them at utog.com to set up an account. 76 degrees, Central Park, Bloomberg 1130, 3-day forecast. Clouds, some sunshine for today. Watch out for these gusty showers and thunderstorms that we're expecting. Definitely going to cause some problems later today with the airports. We'll have a high today, 85 to 90. Coming partly sunny tomorrow, maybe an afternoon shower and thunderstorm, 85 to 90 again. Partly sunny Friday, near 85. This is Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg Markets up next.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is WBDR New York, Bloomberg 1130. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest rates.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
A toxic brew of slower revenue growth.
There is now this belief that Amazon maybe can do anything.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Markets in turmoil. Coming up, we'll talk about the deepening sell-off in U.S. equities, the rally in global bonds with yields plunging near or to all-time lows. We're going to dig into that with a host of people right now, though. Let's get the numbers. Greg Jarrett has that with us for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
You know, Lisa, it's a little interesting to say the market's come back a little bit off lows. It's only down 496 points right now. Stocks opened well down and then took a leg even lower. And as I say, are trying to come back a bit. The 30-year Treasury yield closed in on an all-time low. Michael Houston, CMC Markets, tells Bloomberg 10-year yields could fall back down to record lows seen a few years ago at 1.32%.
If you look at Fed Fund predictions, they're projecting potentially 110 basis points of further U.S. rate cuts between now and the end of next year, which I find quite incredible when you set that against what James Bullard said in comments yesterday when he said that he felt that he didn't see the need for a further rate cut.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio, and the S&P is now down 1.6%, down 46. The Dow's down 2%, down 512. The Nasdaq's down 1.3%, down 104. The 10-year is up 27 seconds with a yield of 1.61%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 3.8% at 51.62 a barrel, while COMEX gold is up 2.5% at 15.21.90 an ounce. The dollar yen 105.66. The euro $1.12.35. The British pound $1.21.61. FedEx is snipping another time with Amazon.com as the e-commerce giant emerges as a competitor by building its own shipping network. FedEx says the ground delivery contract with Amazon will not be renewed when it expires at the end of this month. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is underway with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Craig Jarrett, thank you so much. Certainly a risk-off day today. Lots of red on the screen. Let's see where the action is. Let's go to Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor. Dave, what are you looking at right now?
Well, really, the story of the day is financial stocks leading the way down. It's a spillover from what we're seeing in the bond market. Now you have to be concerned, about banks' ability to make money. I mean, given, a narrowing gap between money market rates and bond yields, that raises concern about where net interest margins go, the differential between what banks pay their depositors and what they earn on their loans. And so you're really seeing that group take a hit. Bank of America down more than 4%. Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, all lower by more than 3%. So really, I mean, the financial stocks are standouts. Regional banks, too. I mean, you're seeing declines of more than 4% in the likes of Citizens Financial and Key Corp and Comerica, PNC. It is really an across-the-board rout in this group.
So here's what I'm struggling with, Dave. What has changed overnight? We had those central bank surprise rate cuts in Asia, and that seems to have spooked markets, given the fact that there is this central bank easing in the face of what at least some policymakers see is a global slowdown. Why is that not supportive of risk assets today?
Well, I mean, what's going on here, it seems like, is there's that much more of a focus on things unraveling. And let's face it, when you have President Trump tweeting about how the Fed's not moving fast enough and not paying attention to the global competition, in essence, to bring down the cost of money, in many cases below zero, as you've pointed out more than once on your Twitter feed, with the negative yielding debt around the world, now above $15 trillion. I mean, it's just crazy. A few years ago, you would have seen next to nothing like this. And now, increasingly, investors are having to pay just to get money taken off their hands. I mean, it's an astounding sort of turn of events. And, now it looks more and more like, the U.S. is kind of getting sucked into this. And that's really what kind of comes front and center on a day like today.
Earnings aren't helping either. We see the Walt Disney Company, the good friends of Mickey Mouse, had a disappointing quarter. The stock's down about 5 or 6%. Kind of really surprised the street there, it looks like.
Oh, it sure did. I mean, they roll out this big Star Wars-based attraction in Disneyland, and it's supposed to bring people into the parks. And what happens? U.S. theme park attendance goes down 3%. So, arguably, at least from some of what I read, they may have priced themselves out of the market a little bit. I mean, who knows? But we do have the Star Wars attraction coming to Disney World this quarter. We'll see if it goes over better there. You just have to look at what's going on in this company and saying, hey, things are different.
It's interesting. Wall Street's, I was looking to see maybe some downgrades because this was a big miss. And, they called out some of the businesses that have been tried and true for them, like the theme parks and the movies. Not one downgrade as far as I can see. Still 22 buys, 9 holds, and 1 sell.
Welcome to Wall Street, right?
Exactly.
I do have to wonder, Dave, though, I'm glad that you brought up Disney, Paul, because it is your wheelhouse, but also because it highlights the fundamentals. And I'm wondering what we've seen in terms of the earnings results as well as the forward-looking guidance that we've gotten from some of these companies. Does it vindicate fears of a recession?
I don't know if it necessarily goes that far. It shows that companies aren't out of the woods in terms of the slump in earnings that we've seen this year. Now, it looks like the S&P 500 is going to have profit growth for the second quarter as it did for the first quarter. Analysts weren't expecting that when the results started coming out. Then again, for the third quarter, they're looking for another decline. And, the extent of the drop gets bigger as every week goes on this earnings season. So, we're kind of back to, being concerned about, how well can companies do, especially, when you throw in, what's happening with interest rates for the financial companies, when you throw in what's happening with tariffs for the industrial companies and their suppliers. So, there is a lot still to get through when it comes to, anticipating a rebound in corporate profits, even though analysts are still doing that. I mean, they're talking 10% plus earnings growth next year.
There is a good name out there, a green name, Weight Watchers, soars over 30%. I guess that's some pretty good numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. You got Weight Watchers, and then you got Match Group, which is Tinder.
So people are getting thinner, and then they're swiping left and right.
Exactly. Stocks up almost 22% off of their results, and it's not just Match Group either, because they're majority owned by IAC Interactive Corp, as you well know, Paul, Barry Diller's company. IAC up 12.5% in the wake of Match's results.
Interesting. So what are you looking for going forward that could potentially edify the market? Although I will say this, markets have backed